Chapter 721, Intervention I. Li Xuanfeng held the small seal in both hands. He kneeled quietly on the ground and was feeling the cold touch in his palms. The seal was indeed small. It was only 2 fingers wide and 3 fingers tall. Coiled atop the seal was a strange serpent, somewhat similar to the hooked serpent Li Wushao back home. However, this one was densely covered in feathers, with 2 long wings extending downward to shroud the sides of the seal. Similar to a hooked serpent, and with the seal's name and Yuan Su's immortal foundation in mind, could it be the legendary pristine water feathered serpent of old? Thought Li Xuanfeng. The seal was a pale golden hue throughout, perfectly uniform without a single impurity. Threads of bluish light flowed across its surface. Simply holding it made the skin feel cold, as though it weighed nothing at all. This is certainly a spirit item, and possibly an ancient one. I've heard it was gifted by Taoist Master Donghua, which would make it not only rare but likely one of the finest of its kind. It was worthy of upholding Yuan Su's renown, thought Li Xuanfeng. He remained silent as he was waiting for someone among the skyborn figures to speak. The seal, drawn by the lingering mana from Yuan Su's passing, emitted a soft glow that cast a cyan gold sheen across his collar. He waited a long time, yet silence persisted. The flute song lingered briefly, then the stern-faced Purple Mansion Realm cultivator of the Azure Ponsects in azure robes finally broke the silence with a calm voice. The Xinyu Lucid Marsh seal belongs to my Azure Ponsect. Naturally, it should be returned to its rightful owner. Xiao Shooting remained silent, floating in midair. The purple-robed female cultivator suddenly spoke coldly. "Si Boxu, is this seal truly Azure Ponsects, or does it belong to the Ning family? You'd best make that clear, or are you saying the Xinyu Lucid Marsh seal should fall into your hands?" This person was indeed Si Boxu, a cultivator of Azure Pond sect. Now he stood with hands clasped behind his back, responding bluntly with a resounding voice. "This matter is not yours to meddle in." At last, Taoist Master Pu Yu spoke, his figure drifting among the misty clouds. He said with a soft voice, "Please, seniors, no need for haste. The Xinyu Lucid Marsh seal is the relic of the late senior Yuan Su. Naturally, it should be given to his descendants. With so many Taoist masters present, this is evident to all." He first turned to the purple-robed female cultivator and said gently, "Fairy Zaipai, all of us here shared some degree of kinship with the late Yuan Su. Of course, we would not allow his possession to fall into the wrong hands." Taoist Master Zaipai nodded. After speaking, Pu Yu turned to look at Yuan Ziu. "Senior Yuan Ziu, let this item first be returned to the Ning family. If Azure Pond still wishes to handle it further, let that be arranged internally within the sect." Si Boxu remained relatively courteous to him, nodding with a neutral expression. Zaipai simply flicked her sleeve, sending a wave of violet mist sweeping outward. She glanced coldly around and said, "Everyone need not linger here. No matter what, this item will never fall into the hands of outsiders." These words seemed directed toward the hidden Purple Mansion Realm cultivators within the Great Void. A heavy silence followed. Her eyes brimmed with violet radiance as she swept her gaze through the void, seeing through all veils. Though Li Xuanfeng never raised his head, he heard everything clearly. He had seen many spirit artifacts such as Yunwu's Cloudsunder and Binding Ring, and even the 6 Ding Merging Fire token. Yet this seal in his hand likely surpassed even that, as it drew so many Purple Mansion Realm cultivators to covet it. Zaipai was one of the peak cultivators of the Purple Mansion Realm. With a single sweeping gaze, she saw all with perfect clarity. Most of those who had been watching from the void quietly withdrew. Several even clasped hands politely before vanishing into the Great Void. In just a few seconds, all the Purple Mansion Realm cultivators dispersed. Partly out of respect for Zaipai's strength and partly out of wariness toward the Purple Smoke Gate and Azure Pond sect. Soon, the field cleared except for one lingering figure. Taoist Master Zaipai crossed her arms. At her waist, a violet celestial sword lit up with dazzling brilliance. She spoke in a low voice, "Qing Jifeng, what business brings you here from Mount Changhui?" As soon as her voice fell, a gray-robed youth appeared. He was holding a floating gray jade pearl that emitted streams of gray mist. He smiled and said, "Surely you jest, senior. Why shouldn't I be here? My Mount Changhui in the Wu region is also one of the 6 Changming lineages. With such a great event unfolding, it's only right to come investigate and lend a hand." He had only just appeared, and while the faces of the Purple Mansion Realm cultivators remained composed, a sense of unease rose within them. Xiao Shooting held his white jade fishing rod and lowered his gaze as he thought to himself, as expected. Even Mount Changhui's hidden force has made a move. I wonder if true monarch Tei has already reached the late stage of the Golden Core Realm. A pity for Shangyuan. Clearly, the surrounding Purple Mansion Realm cultivators sensed from Qing Jifeng's words that Mount Changhui had intervened, and they each felt a foreboding within, though none let it show on their faces. Only Qing Jifeng remained calm and carefree, standing at ease with the hovering gray pearl in his hand. Though the others didn't express it, he could sense their wariness clearly, and so he stood quietly content. By now, the situation had evolved beyond the mere ownership of the Xinyu lucid marsh seal. Even Mount Changhuai's true monarch had seemingly become involved, altering the balance instantly. The assembled Taoist masters fell silent, each deep in thought. Taking advantage of their momentary distraction, Qing Jifeng drifted gently down to the spring's edge, gazing at the silent Li Xuanfeng and offering a faint smile. As Qing Jifeng looked at the old general with gray-black eyes, sharp brows, and a face subtly weathered from the absence of treasured panaceas, he felt a sudden, strange sense of familiarity. There was a ruthless dominance in the man's presence that stirred something deep within him. As a Purple Mansion realm cultivator, Qing Jifeng had long mastered divine sight. A brief glance was enough to uncover the source of this familiarity. He paused, surprised, then smiled incredulously. He exclaimed, "I knew it. This face looks so familiar. What a coincidence. No, how uncanny, so it's you." Li Xuanfeng kept his head lowered, saying nothing. But Qing Jifeng burst into laughter and muttered, "Born of a Yang father and bore the 3-9 true talisman. Mother died by Yin with the shamanic blood talisman. Brilliant, truly brilliant. Jiang Boking's methods are indeed formidable." He bared gleaming white teeth and, as if recovering from amusement, called out, "Hand it over." His laughter and cold demand drew the attention of the Purple Mansion cultivators above. Li Xuanfeng raised his brow and glanced at him but did not move. Qing Jifeng fell silent. Though Li Xuanfeng hadn't moved at all, the gray mist surrounding him suddenly clashed with an unseen force which produced metallic ringing sounds. Qing Jifeng sharply raised a brow and looked skyward. There he saw Taoist Master Pu Yu in his blue and white robe nodding with a gentle smile, forming a spell with 2 fingers. The gray mist in Qing Jifeng's hand grew more agitated until a violet immortal sword appeared. Held between slender and fair fingers, it pointed directly at him. The sleeve's purple silk unraveled and dissipated into violet mist. Taoist Master Zaipai stared coldly at him. Her red lips parted as she spoke bluntly, "You're welcome to try." Though Qing Jifeng was only at the mid-stage of the Purple Mansion realm and clearly not a match for Zaipai, his stance was firm. He stared in silence. The tension thickened to the point of suffocation. After over 10 seconds, he finally said coldly, "You're not afraid, senior." Chapter 722, Intervention II. Li Xuanfeng waited silently. At last, the golden-robed woman who had remained motionless in the air descended like a breeze, a leaden glow shimmering around her. Her face remained hidden behind a veil of white gauze, concealing her features as she spoke gently. "Regarding today's matter, my Golden Feather sect shares the same view. Since Mount Changhuai is friendly with us, perhaps you could give me this courtesy." Only after she spoke did Qing Jifeng's expression ease. With the Teibai star still gleaming in the sky above, he could only reply, "Since this is Senior Qiushui's stance, let this Dharma artifact be handled by the Golden Feather sect." Zhang Qiushui was cautious, unwilling to accept the words directly. She responded softly, "This is a matter for Changming. I only hope it's resolved properly without losing decorum." With Taoist Master Qiushui stepping in, the confrontation in the sky finally. Qing Jifeng gave Zaipai a deep look and said quietly, "Your breakthrough is near, Taoist Master. Better to concern yourself with preserving your life." With that, he pierced into the great void and vanished. Zhang Qiushui saw him off without a word, then calmly produced a crystal-clear jade flask. She tipped it slightly, pouring a stream of clear wine into the air. The droplets landed on the reef below with crisp sounds, releasing a gentle, intoxicating fragrance. After emptying the flask, she put it away. Her figure slowly faded until she too disappeared. For a moment, heaven and earth fell silent. The spring murmured mournfully, and the remaining Purple Mansion realm cultivators in the air said nothing. The sound of the flute left behind by Yuan Su's passing echoed gently over the sea, evoking sorrow. The flute's melody clearly carried divine power. Fish and shrimp that leapt from the sea now lay limp on the reef, while faint sobs could be heard from the deep ocean below. Some demonic creatures must have heard the sound and been overwhelmed. They too were wailing at the seafloor. The remaining Purple Mansion realm cultivators present were all old acquaintances of Yuan Su. In life, he had been sharp-tongued and fond of sarcasm, not well-liked, so only a few had stayed behind. None of them used divine ability and mana to resist the flute's effects. Instead, they allowed themselves to be carried by its pull. As if they were lost in memory, all of them fell silent. Li Xuanfeng listened for a while, his face tinged with sorrow. He had followed Yuan Su for a long time. At first, it was more coercion than companionship. But later, Yuan Su had personally sought cultivation techniques and spirit armor for him, treated him as a junior or even kid. Though it was calculated, there was sincerity too. He had helped Li Xuanfeng through many hardships. In the end, Yuan Su had pushed him to eliminate names on a certain list of cultivators, yet Li Xuanfeng understood it was to prepare for matters after death. He couldn't bring himself to hate him. He also knew Yuan Su had taken his uncle Li Qijing into the southern border, but now everything felt uncertain. Hate, who should I hate? Who can I hate? They say everyone has hidden burdens. But if a burden exists, does that absolve guilt? Muttered Li Xuanfeng. Now that this purple mansion realm backer had passed away, it was impossible not to feel sorrow. Yet within that sorrow, he tasted the searing sting of betrayal. The morning face of Li Tongya at his uncle's death flashed before his eyes again. Li Xuanfeng bit his lip until blood spilled. He remained kneeling on the ground when Zaipai appeared beside him, frowning as she said, "Get up, Li Xuanfeng." In an instant, all of Li Xuanfeng's emotions vanished. He suppressed them once again into his heart, forming a cold, steely composure. He stood up quietly and said with respectful voice, "Greetings, Taoist Master Zaipai." Her tone remained curt as she said, "Come with me to the Purple Smoke Gate." Yuan Ziu's face darkened at once, but Taoist Master Pu Yu quickly stepped in to smooth things over, speaking gently, "How about this? If you both still trust me, let the Xinyu Lucid Marsh Seal remain with me. I will accompany you to the Purple Smoke Gate myself. Senior Yuan Ziu can return to the sect first to handle matters and bring back Yuan Su's descendants. The three of us will witness the spirit artifact recognize its master. Everything will be proper." Pu Yu, with his refined features and gentle smile, spoke smoothly. Yuan Ziu considered for a moment, then sighed with reluctant resignation. He waved his sleeve and said to Zaipai, "Kan Zuyu, take care of yourself." His form quickly faded and vanished. Taoist Master Zaipai's expression remained unchanged. As Li Xuanfeng stood, still not fully reacting, he suddenly realized the seal had already been passed into Taoist Master Pu Yu's hand. He stood silently atop the clouds, listening as Taoist Master Pu Yu clicked his tongue in admiration, studying the seal's carvings and sighing. He said, "So this is what the true feathered serpent looks like. Only the lineage of Taoist Master Donghua would know. After all, the immortal mansion's lord saw it firsthand. If even his records are inaccurate, then nothing in the world can be trusted." After a while of praise, he began calculating with finger signs. Li Xuanfeng noticed faint traces of blood appear in Pu Yu's palm, yet this strange Taoist master turned the blood into fragments of mana and continued calculating relentlessly. "Xinyu Lucid Marsh Seal," he murmured, "to convert killing intent into suppression, to use the radiance of twin metals to summon pristine water. What a brilliant method. When this seal descends, it births slaughter beneath Xinyu, turning flat ground into a lucid marsh. No wonder it holds the makings of a true Dharma relic." While he continued studying the seal on his own, Taoist Master Zaipai finally spoke after a long pause. "I wondered when you became so kind. Turns out all your roundabout kindness was just to get your hands on this spirit artifact and examine it. Truly meticulous scheming." Pu Yu hummed in vague agreement, continuing to observe the seal carefully. The group soon emerged from the great void, reappearing in a realm filled with swirling violet mist. Jagged peaks rose one after another, large and small, their summits appearing and vanishing within dense violet clouds. The mist coiled and swirled like silk, rising skyward with immortal elegance. Pavilions and towers gleamed with magnificence, and cultivators rode the clouds to and fro. It was a truly celestial scene. Purple smoke-blessed land. This was clearly the mountain gate of the Purple Smoke Gate. Taoist Master Pu Yu soon lifted his head to take in the view and praised, "What a blessed land indeed. In this very place, true monarch Taixu attained his Tao and became a true monarch, founding the Tao of Purple Essence. My grandmaster came to congratulate him, and even brought back a bit of dawn purple chi to craft a Dharma artifact for my master." At the mention of this, Taoist Master Zaipai's expression finally softened somewhat. She spoke gently, "How flourishing the 6 Chang'eming lineages once were, and now we've fallen to this. Had the founding patriarch not met with misfortune, perhaps things wouldn't have ended up this way." Taoist Master Pu Yu replied with a sigh, "True monarchs Teiyu and Taixu, what a pity. If they hadn't passed on one after another, the Green Pine Tao lineage might still have had a chance to rise again. Some people simply didn't want to see it happen." Zaipai replied coldly. The two continued conversing while admiring the blessed land's scenery, not bothering to avoid Li Xuanfeng listening to their conversation. After a few moments, Zaipai finally remembered him and asked in a low voice, "Li Xuanfeng, which Li family are you from?" Chapter 723, Pearl Swallowing Eye. Taoist Master Zaipai asked a question and then paused slightly. The purple mist within the cave dwelling paused along with her words, and Li Xuanfeng could only reply, "I was originally a cultivator of the Li family from Moongaze Lake. Thanks to your guidance, I was stationed at the southern border. Now I serve under the Ning family." "Li of Moongaze," muttered Zaipai. Taoist Master Zaipai didn't seem to care much, only listening as Taoist Master Pu Yu spoke softly. "Senior, I heard they're a branch of the Wei's Li lineage under Azure Pond Sect's jurisdiction." "So it's the Wei's Li branch," said Zaipai. Upon hearing this, Taoist Master Zaipai immediately lost interest, as if she didn't think much of Wei's Li. But since Li Xuanfeng had ties to Yuan Su, she pondered for a moment and said, "Wei's Li, there'll be room for movement later. Find a place to rest on the peak for now. When the time comes, return with Si Boxiu." Li Xuanfeng cupped his hands and took his leave, descending into the mountain as purple mist drifted through the celestial landscape. Taoist Master Pu Yu watched him go and said seriously, Senior Yuan Su truly went to great lengths to protect his junior. Leaving the bargaining chip with the Ning family was quite the calculated move. Taoist Master Zaipai responded softly, clearly seeing through the arrangement as well. If he had passed away within the sect, this Xinyu lucid marsh seal would likely have ended up in the hands of the Kai family or Si Boxu. Even if passed to his descendants, it wouldn't escape the sect's hidden manipulations. By passing away in public view, he actually secured the Xinyu lucid marsh seal. With the Golden Feather sect, you and I as guarantors and Si Boxu needing to save face, it can be safeguarded for at least a few decades. Taoist Master Pu Yu shook his head and said, it won't last forever. Once Si Boxu waits too long and grows impatient, he'll find ways, through pressure or otherwise, to make him hand it over willingly. Taoist Master Zaipai sat down amidst the swirling purple mist within her cave and said with a nod, isn't there a Ning Wan? A few decades should be more than enough. If she succeeds in her breakthrough, she'll rightfully keep the spirit artifact. If she fails, it's a danger in her hands anyway. Handing it over wouldn't be a loss. Both Taoist masters had clearly seen through Yuan Su's arrangement. Even Si Boxu understood it, but each chose to go along with the flow. Taoist Master Pu Yu paused, seemingly deep in thought, and after a long while spoke softly. The true monarch's battle won't resolve quickly, but the heavens over the northern sea still need mending. All the sects must act together. We must invite another true monarch. If we let the seawater continue to pour down like this, by the time the true monarchs return, the northern sea will have flooded the wilderness, linked up with the eastern and western seas and submerged countless sects and territories. Taoist Master Zaipai nodded, clearly taking the matter seriously, and said softly, Empress Beiyao has manifested often in recent years and is the easiest to negotiate with. Let's seek her out. As for who should lead, naturally it should be the Yue cultivating sect. All who acted such as the Azure Pond sect, Golden Feather sect, and the Dragon clan should contribute. We just wait for Yue cultivating sect to make a move. Taoist Master Pu Yu nodded gently, glanced eastward and smiled. All the true monarchs have gone off to battle in the outer heavens. Looks like the Dragon clan is going to seize the thunder. Eastern Sea. Waves surged endlessly and the waters gleamed crystal clear. All kinds of demonic creatures often rose with the wind and rode the waves. Islands were scattered irregularly across the sea like stars in the sky, with demonic creatures and beasts weaving in and out between them. On a normal day, many cultivators would be seen flying across the sea, but now a sense of panic filled the air. Streaks of escape light flashed across the sky, trailing colorful glows behind them. The islands across the sea gradually revealed a more ominous presence. The larger islands such as Spleetered Island, Chunny Island, and Crimson Reef Island had expanded by 30 to 40%, stretching out for thousands of meters. Marketplaces originally built on the seabed now emerged into view, and formation arrays shimmered in the air with radiant light. Even the mid-sized islands like Kingsong and Dongliu had greatly expanded. Cultivators looked out at the sea, their expressions a mix of concern and joy. Demon dens slowly emerged on the exposed seafloor. Small demonic creatures held tridents in their hands, blankly watching the seawater recede inch by inch. Thunder roared across the heavens and earth, yet not a single drop of rain fell. Li Qinghang led a group of cultivators from Zongquan Island to survey the area. The island had expanded nearly 50 kilometers and was still continuing to stretch outward, revealing various corals, fish, and shrimp. There were now over 30,000 people on Zongquan Island. Children and adults alike stood nervously along the former shoreline, staring blankly in fear. Some bolder ones had already rolled up their pant legs and stepped into the sea, tossing fish, shrimp, clams, and crabs into jars. Li Qinghang hovered in the air with her spear in hand. Thunder surged beneath her feet, and violet light flowed around her, but she could not hide the worry in her expression. She could vaguely see colorful lights rising in the north. But where Li Zijai was, the Xia mountain lay north of the converging sea and bordered the northern sea. From where she stood, in the scarlet pristine sea nearly down to the southern sea, she could barely make out anything beyond a few faintly rising flashes of color. All she could do was have Zhang Yan arrange the people, and after waiting quietly for a while, decide to summon Huiyao to inquire further. As the scouts were dispatched into the sea, Li Qinghang checked the time, quietly concealed her presence, and waited in midair. Sure enough, after waiting patiently for only a short while, a green fish with scaled wings under its ribs burst out from the water. It transformed into a half-human, half-fish form, holding a sea trident. He finally withdrew his demonic wind, steadied himself, and respectfully said, "Ah, greetings, fairy." Back when they fought the cloud octopus together, he had been terribly frightened by Li Qinghang's thunder. Thunder was, after all, the righteous path for slaying demonic creatures, and he had submitted wholeheartedly ever since. Now, seeing that Li Qinghang had already reached the late Foundation establishment realm, and wore at her waist a small bottle with purple lightning-shaped patterns, which radiated a deep and obscure thunderous power. He felt a chill of fear rise again in his heart. After all these years, this female cultivator of purple lightning has grown even stronger. Who knows what level she's reached now? That's right, falling water and rising storm in the eastern sea. This is the perfect time for a lightning cultivator. He kept his head low and eyes down. Being a demonic creature of the Dragon Palace, he knew his place. Li Qinghang did not act arrogantly and asked, "Fellow Taoist, do you know the reason behind the receding seawater?" Huiyao immediately understood and shook his head repeatedly, answering in a low voice, replying to the fairy, "Dingyuan the dragon son left some days ago. Now the many local demonic creatures are running about like headless flies. I inquired around several nearby waters, but all I heard were some vague and unreliable rumors." Li Qinghang nodded, signaling him to continue. Huiyao said the word from several water mansions is that Dragon Monarch Beijia and Dragon Monarch Xiang dragged down a grotto heaven in Quinyi. As soon as the grotto heaven's entrance opened, the seawater began pouring into it. This is how things ended up like this. Li Qinghang had dealt with many demonic creatures over the years, but this was the first time she had heard the name Dragon Monarch Beijia. She asked, "Who's Dragon Monarch Beijia?" Huiyao paused for a moment, then suddenly understood and replied, "People like you, who are at the Purple Mansion and Golden Core Realm, refer to him as the Dragon King of the Converging Waters." So it was the leader of the Dragon Clan, the Dragon Monarch of Converging Waters, thought Li Qinghang. Chapter 724, Pearl Swallowing Ai. Among the Dragon Clan, there were two well-known dragon monarchs. The first was the Lord of Converging Waters, known to commoners and lesser cultivators as the Dragon King of the Northern Sea. He had an extremely long lifespan and was referred to within the Dragon Clan as Dragon Monarch Beijia. The other was Dragon Monarch Xiang, who split from an immortal into three forms. Among Golden Core Realm cultivators, he was considered a junior and often appeared in the world, which made him more widely known. Seeing her expression, Huiyao quickly added, "Back in the day, the Dragon King was granted stewardship over the Northern Sea and was gifted the character Jia by an immortal." Li Qinghang nodded as she listened, though a strange look appeared on her face. She asked, "A grotto heaven, that's impossible. With the power of those two dragon monarchs, how could seawater be allowed to leak into Thundercloud Temple?" As the two were conversing, thunder suddenly exploded through the heavens and earth. The sea howled as dark clouds rolled, and waves of violet light began to appear in the eastern sky. Layers of thunderclouds emerged, and a translucent, pale golden circular outline hovered in the sky. Inside it, pavilions and towers gradually appeared, scattered among the violet thunderclouds. A grotto heaven. Countless bolts of thunder light emerged from the east. Li Qinghang felt her immortal foundation surging within, her internal thunder pool churning as a wave of intense foreboding washed over her. The shaft of her Duriwo spear shimmered with iridescent light, trembling with excitement. Thundercloud Temple, Tao of Thunder steering and cloud dwelling. Li Qinghang understood that her destined opportunity lay here, but for now she could only watch helplessly. Then, riding a streak of lightning within the black winds, she soared into the dark, heavy thunderclouds. Intense thunder had already begun to spread in the area. Huiyao followed behind, trembling with fear. All around them, within the dark clouds, many cultivators could be seen looking up in stunned silence. She gazed into the distant east, silently watching, passing through streaks of thunder, a trace of regret in her heart. It's a pity. "I can't even touch this thing, and it's already fallen into the hands of the Dragon Monarch." The Thundercloud Temple's grotto heaven lay hidden behind the surging storm and thunder, and beyond the pale golden barrier was a palace complex of thunder suspended in the air. Countless black clouds gathered, covering the entire eastern sea. From time to time, a scale the size of a small mountain would emerge from the clouds, reflecting violet thunderlight so intense that Li Qinghang's face turned deathly pale. She nearly lost her breath and fell from the sky. She retreated some distance and saw that the black clouds above the Quinyi Sea resembled an enormous dragon's head, slowly swallowing a violet pearl. It was now the moment when the grotto heaven and the mortal world overlapped. The scenery inside could be seen with the naked eye. Li Qinghang, having cultivated a perception technique, could clearly make out numerous ancient tomes swirling in the storm and falling like rain onto the palace rooftops. She looked upward at the structure. The grotto heaven was composed of 5 thunder platforms. At the highest point stood a grand hall with finely carved eaves, rooftops of gilded copper, and floors paved with violet jade. Atop the ridge of the hall stood a lone, azure figure. Yuan Tuan, Li Qinghang could barely make out her robes fluttering in the wind. She stood there, motionless like a statue atop the great hall, facing alone the dragon's head whose teeth were as vast as mountains. Boom! Thunder roared as the woman in the violet grotto heaven sank into the clouds like a shelled egg swallowed whole. They vanished from sight, and the dragon monarch didn't even seem to chew before closing its mouth. The brilliant violet golden light faded between its teeth. In the final instant, Li Qinghong thought she saw that the woman's azure robes had turned red, vanishing like drifting sand within the depths of the celestial palace. The black clouds in the sky vanished in an instant, retreating to the horizon as if fleeing, as though they had never appeared. Li Qinghong descended on a streak of lightning, feeling a deep sense of loss. Huiyao followed beside her and asked blankly, "Fairy, why did it suddenly start thundering?" Li Qinghong glanced at him quietly, a dazed expression on her face, and shook her head saying, "The clouds were too thick, the thunder came in waves, I couldn't see clearly." Both of them rode the wind downward. Huiyao muttered on about this and that, while Li Qinghong focused on calming her emotions. Such a surge of thunder. Maybe the dragon monarch was simply dragging a grotto heaven as he passed through. Huiyao murmured with a tone of longing, "Seems like those from the neighboring waters didn't have it right. After all, a grotto heaven should rest atop a mountain, not under the sea. There must be another reason." Li Qinghong no longer hoped to learn anything useful from him. She politely sent him away, then quietly returned to her cave dwelling and sat alone in the upper chamber. She sat for a while, but the image of the dragon monarch swallowing the pearl kept replaying in her mind. Li Qinghong understood Yuan Tuan was most likely no longer alive, trapped in a grotto heaven for over 10 years, watching helplessly as her would-be rescuer fell, and then slowly waiting to be consumed by the dragon monarch. Senior Yuan, thought Li Qinghong. Li Qinghong had met Yuan Tuan before, back when she came to take Li Zijai back to the sect. She seemed gentle and gracious. Later, Li Qinghong learned that Yuan Tuan had secretly intervened during the devil plague to protect Li Xuanxuan, which had made her grateful in her heart. Azure Crest manifestation is capable of blessing others, yet unable to secure good fortune for herself, only to fall into the tiger's jaws in vain. Whether Yuan Tuan's jade pendant in the Yuan family still holds effect, I don't know, but Azure Ponsek's soul lamp must already have gone out. As for Zijai, there's no need to tell him. He wouldn't be able to see it anyway, it would only stir unnecessary trouble. Just as Li Qinghong managed to settle her heart, she suddenly heard a crisp knocking sound. Knock, knock, knock. In an instant, Li Qinghong's heart felt as if it had been shattered like frost struck by a hammer, cold and shaken, filling her entire chest. All thoughts fled her mind, leaving behind only pure terror. Knock, knock, knock. The sound echoed through the cave dwelling. It was chilling and crisp. Li Qinghong's expression changed slightly as she quickly gripped her spear and thought, "Who's there?" Zongquan Island was currently under the management of Li Chenghui, with Zong Yan assisting. If either of them needed her, they would activate the formation to summon her or send a voice transmission. No matter what, it would never come to simply knocking on the door. Creak. Before she could respond, and just as she picked up her spear, the defensive formation of the cave might as well have been decoration. The stone door at the entrance slowly creaked open, and a pair of cloth shoes stepped steadily inside. The figure placed one foot inside, then pushed the door further open while stepping forward. As the door swung wide, a smiling face came into view, revealing 8 gleaming white teeth. The newcomer wore azure robes, appeared young, with flowing sleeves and long hair cascading down. His smile gradually faded as he squinted slightly at her, standing with hands clasped behind his back. He was seemingly curious. His pupils were pale cyan, and he exuded a heavy and oppressive presence just by standing there. Countless rippling green shadows floated around him which overlapped and gleamed with an icy brilliance. His robe was wide-sleeved and flowing, wholly azure in color, but at the waist hung a golden tassel. Li Qinghong recognized it. It was the uniform of the Azure Pond sect. Azure Pond disciples, guest cultivators, Taoists, peak masters, sect masters, and Purple Mansion realm cultivators all wore similar robes, but the details differed. Thanks to Li Zijai and Yuan Tuan, Li Qinghong could recognize a peak master's garb at a glance. But this robe, this one was even more ornate. Her attention lingered on the robe for only a moment, then was immediately drawn to the man's face. Li Qinghong stared at him in a daze. She actually recognized this face. Not only did she recognize it, it was perhaps the last face she ever wished to see. Horror surged through her heart in waves as she thought, Kai Buzi. Chapter 725, Surplus Wealth I. Li Qinghong's pupils dilated slightly, and the violet light in her eyes faded significantly. She had already stowed away the Duruo spear, exhaled softly, brought her delicate hands together, and said gently, "Qinghong greets Senior." Li Qinghong remembered that day all too clearly. Kai Buzi's soul had seemed damaged, and she didn't know if he still recalled what happened. So she left it at that, simply calling him Senior. If Kai Buzi had indeed lost his memory, then it would be as if the two had never met. And if he was merely some water mansion immortal official, then her words would not be out of place either. Kai Buzi, hair loose and unkempt, said nothing. He sat down on a nearby stone bench and his pale cyan eyes was fixed on her. He had achieved the Purple Mansion realm many years ago and cultivated the pristine water Tao, which revolved around the balance of clarity and murk. Naturally, his appearance was refined and his presence ethereal. Yet in his eyes lingered something strange, something twisted and eerie. He parted his lips slightly and spoke in a low voice. "Li Qinghang, you recognize me." Though he smiled, his words were cold like snow in the depths of winter, falling all over Li Qinghang's body. She lowered her gaze and spoke. "Senior jests. Qinghang has cultivated for decades and never once laid eyes on a purple mansion realm master. How could I be so fortunate as to witness a real immortal's presence?" Kai Buzi sat quietly in the guest seat and used no divine abilities. Yet his presence was overwhelming, pressing heavily on Li Qinghang's chest where she stood. Dong, dong, dong. The spring within the cave residence began to echo, its once clear waters slowly turning a murky gray. Kai Buzi lifted his brow and said with a smile, "Li Qinghang, I can see it clearly. You're afraid of me, whether from guilt or fear itself. You may have methods to resist divine ability, but I can see it all." Kai Buzi gazed at her calmly and continued, "That time, I likely used a soul-searching technique and accidentally touched that one's metallic essence. That's why I ended up like that. But this time, I won't be careless." The golden sash at his waist glowed faintly with spell light. Kai Buzi rose and paced 2 steps atop the platform, speaking in a low voice. "I guessed it was your family, so I dared not return to Moongaze Lake. But after much searching, I found this Zonquin island in the outer seas, so I waited here." Kai Buzi clasped his hands behind his back, standing with his back to the cave's source of light. On his pale hands were 2 faint lines, and he spoke gently. "Now that pristine water has gone to the outer heavens and has no strength to oversee things here, I came. Li Qinghang." He slowly turned around. From his pale cyan pupils emerged a terrifying murky qi, gathering into a mist-like haze that curled upward from the corners of his eyes. He asked, "And who's the master? Ying's, Shexian, or the one from the water mansion?" Li Qinghang didn't answer, only feeling the suffocating pressure in the cave intensify. She dissected Kai Buzi's words, line by line, and quickly arrived at a conclusion. "I guessed it was your family. You're afraid of me." Kai Buzi's memory is definitely fragmented. Otherwise, he wouldn't be guessing. He'd remember what happened that day clearly. There's a 90% chance that he forgot what happened at the lake. Whether he truly forgot or merely dared not remember, it makes no difference. Kai Buzi seemed indifferent, but those pale cyan eyes of his were clearly gauging her expression. He said, "Li Qinghang, that one left something in my soul, you must know this." He smiled slightly, revealing sharp white teeth, beckoned with a finger and whispered, "I didn't dare think of it at all. I just wandered the eastern sea with that foolish immortal official, pointing everything out to him one by one, unraveling all his precious constructs. And so his spirit wavered and he lost his foundation. Once his spirit wavered, he made the wrong choice. And then I consumed that foolish immortal official and swallowed all his cultivation. Only then did I dare to think again. You underestimated me, as did Kai Wei, Yuan Ziu, and pristine water." His tone remained calm. "I'm not some fool easily suppressed. The methods used to keep other Purple Mansion realm cultivators obedient don't work on me. I've already devoured the immortal official. It was a true tonic. It allowed me to master a 4th divine ability, one called Chaogui Hidden Form. It conceals all dharmas within the body and can do many, many things." He walked to the head seat and slowly sat down, facing the glow of the cave, speaking softly. "The fact that you don't dare kill me proves you've not yet reached the Golden Core realm. You wish to reclaim your fruition attainment, and to do that, pristine water must be eliminated." Kai Buzi gave a faint smile and said gently, "How pristine water's fruition attainment is dealt with, I won't covet. I only ask for a single golden core, whether it's a surplus position or an intercalary one, I ask only for that. The master will need someone like me." His expression was sincere, his tone gentle. "If the master wishes to reclaim fruition attainment or even ascend to immortal rank, you will need a capable hand, trust me. In such a filthy world, whether for righteous path or heretical, people like me are the true sharp blades, the immortal official types. We'll only make more and more of a mess." Kai Buzi didn't wait for Li Qinghang to respond and said softly, "Whether pristine water will return gravely injured, whether Shangyuan will be struck down and retreat to fruition attainment. I, a mere Purple Mansion realm cultivator, cannot see clearly, but the master surely can. If there is any command you may stir fate itself to guide this humble one, Buzi will know." It sounded like a pledge, yet also a subtle probe. He continued in a low voice, "But if this humble one dies, pristine water will surely notice. I fear it may jeopardize master's plans." Li Qinghang understood these words weren't meant for her. She remained silent. Kai Buzi rose from the high seat, descended step by step, and came to stand before her, smiling and said, "Buzi takes his leave." His figure vanished like a gust of murky wind, slipping into the cracks of stone and disappearing into the great void. Li Qinghang remained standing in the courtyard, unsure whether the master Kai Buzi spoke of was truly watching. She stood still for 2 breaths, then sat cross-legged, silently digesting everything Kai Buzi had said. Quinee straight. Kai Buzi moved through the great void, plunging deep beneath the sea. After traveling over 5,000 kilometers, he stopped on a desolate, uninhabited island. His hands, hidden in his sleeves, still trembled uncontrollably. His breath was rapid, and the calm, composed demeanor from earlier had long since vanished. His vision darkened with lingering panic. Damn it, that was a true monarch, or maybe even an immortal. Kai Busey panted as he tried to steady himself. The fact that he hadn't yet exploded into a puddle of blue water meant the true monarch had at least partially accepted what he said. To bargain with a tiger. It's a desperate move, but the only one I have. Kai Busey's expression darkened gradually as he muttered, "Pristine water must know that the current Tao requires blending purity and turbidity to be successful." Yet he deceived Kai Rui and Kai Wei completely, handing down that 5 elements command metal technique. He clearly just wants to keep them from breaking through. Right, Muhai said it himself. He strained everything to suppress the dragon nature of his fruition attainment. How could he possibly allow anyone else to attain a surplus or intercalary position? He fears being usurped more than anything. Kai Busey's gaze was steeped in shadow, like a venomous serpent. He muttered to himself, "If I want to reach the golden core realm, staying under pristine water only leads to death. I'd be thrown into that pristine gooey pool eventually. If I can't reach the golden core realm in this life, what's the point of living? Better to die now." He had nothing to lose. He didn't fear being struck down by the Li family's true monarch, or being discovered by pristine water. If he couldn't break through to the golden core realm, it was only a matter of time before he died anyway. Let it be death then, I'll try it anyway. Kai Busey's thoughts churned as he considered, that one is likely water virtue too. It's able to navigate both sides, if I get a clear read on them and they falter. Then once things are done with pristine water's backing, I might still have a chance at golden core realm. Chapter 726, Surplus Wealth, II, Mount Qingdu. Li Zijian rode the wind back from the lake's edge and landed atop the mountain. He had seen strange phenomena in both the north and east. Not only the Li family, but the entire Jiangnan region was in turmoil, with everyone anxious and afraid. Li Ziming had long since entered seclusion to cultivate, but Li Zijian had to stay alert to the situation. The Li family's forces in Milan Prefecture were gradually being reinforced, and a few branches had been transferred in as they were preparing to establish several peak offices. After all, Milan Prefecture was quite vast. It was even broader than the family's original territory. Distributing several peaks across it was more than feasible. Just as Li Zijian entered the main hall, he saw a young man standing within. The young man was graceful and noble, clad in white robes with an extraordinary presence. Li Zijian's eyes lit up and he said with a smile on his face, "Brother Zijai." The visitor was naturally Li Zijai. Though he had stayed the night at Xia Mountain, in the end he couldn't rest easy. He flew back alone, leaving Yang Xiaor safely behind at the mountain. He nodded to his younger brother and spoke softly. "True monarch Shang Yuan has now successfully broken through in the northern sea, you must have heard." Seeing Li Zijian nod, he gave a rough overview of the situation across the 4 seas. Just then, Li Qingliao flew up to the peak. Upon seeing Li Zijai, his eyes lit up and he bowed. "The family branches in Milan have all been settled. We're surveying the earth veins now and selecting several mountains to establish new peak offices." Li Zijian replied in a low voice. Outside, the sound of a gentle drizzle began. Li Qingliao seemed uneasy and gave the falling rain a slight glance. Li Zijian also felt a faint chill in his heart. Strange omens had been appearing frequently in recent days. He couldn't help but worry for his elder brother Li Zicheng, who was in seclusion. While he was still processing the thought, someone came up from below. The woman who approached was graceful and striking. It was Li Minggong, eldest of the radiant lure generation. Her cultivation wasn't high, still only at the early stage of the Qi cultivation realm, and her face carried sorrow as she cupped her hands and said, reporting to 8th uncle, "Eldest uncle's life jade has shattered." Li Zijian froze in place for a moment, so this was the reason for the rain. Beside him, Li Qingliao's eyes turned red upon hearing news of his father's death. He stood there, stunned. Li Zicheng was Li Zijian's elder brother. Both of them had lost their father young, and the bond between them ran deep. Though he had a faint premonition, Li Zijian still stood frozen in place. Li Zijai, unaware that Li Zicheng had been in seclusion attempting a breakthrough, showed a faint expression of grief and asked quietly, "What happened?" The group swiftly rode the wind, descending like lightning into the underground water mansion of Mount Qingdu. Only then did they notice the dampness of the cave. When they reached the stone door where the seclusion chamber lay, droplets of water covered the surrounding walls. Seeing this, Li Zijai immediately understood. He lowered his gaze in silence, while Li Zijian hesitated for a moment before ultimately instructing Li Qingliao to open the chamber. At the same time, he turned to Li Minggong and ordered, "Elder brother has many children, go summon them here." Li Minggong nodded. With a sword at her waist and graceful bearing, she replied, "Messengers have already been sent. They'll be arriving shortly, along with several elders from the chief's court." Years ago, when Li Ziming abdicated his position, Li Zicheng had been appointed in his place and later became head of the family. That role was then passed to Li Qingliao. His death was no small matter. It warranted the presence of the family elders. By custom and courtesy, it fell to Li Qinglao to handle his father's remains, while the other matters were left to Li Zijian. He quickly composed himself, observing as several youths entered the water mansion. They were nervous and reserved. These were Qinglao's younger siblings, some with low aptitude, others mere mortals. The Li family system was harsh in this regard. Most of these children had never even been to Qingdu, and every action they took was scrutinized because of their birth. All of them stood in silence. Li Zijian took the time to ask their names, noticing their clothes were worn and modest. Before he could inquire further, the family elders arrived. Led by Li Xuanxuan, most of them were white-haired elders. Li Xuanxuan's beard trembled slightly as he sighed in sorrow. A few members of the chief's court stood behind the current chief, Li Xiaowei. The heir stood quietly, head bowed, tightly gripping the jade slip in his hand, his fingertips slightly pale. Having observed everyone carefully, Li Zijian finally spoke in a soft voice. According to custom, the contents of elder brother's storage pouch and cave residence go to Qinglao. The remaining spiritual assets and treasures shall be distributed among his children. We are all present to witness. You may begin the reading. With that said, he waited for Li Xiaowei to handle the division. But the young man cupped his hands slightly and replied, "Grandfather left 1 residence, 2 meditation cushions, and a single incense burner. They are valued at 3 spirit stones. It's insufficient for division, so it was converted into 300 jin of spirit patty, 50 jin for each child." At these words, Li Xuanxuan froze. The elders all looked to one another, expressions shifting. Li Zijia exchanged only a glance with Li Xuanxuan, and both understood what the other was thinking. Qinglao and Xiaowei aren't the type to covet wealth. So why are they making such a poor show of it? After a moment of silence, one man stepped forward. He was Li Zicheng's second son, who was now married with a grown beard. He bowed respectfully and said, "Honored elders, my grandfather left behind no remains. My father endured hardship since youth and disdained luxury. The things he acquired in life were all gifted to struggling cultivators, both inside and outside the family. While cultivating in Qingdu, his residence held not a single spirit item." His words left the hall in silence. Li Zijian nodded slightly. Beside him, Li Xiaowei added, "Honored elders, grandfather governed the household for 17 years and he left behind no surplus wealth." Li Zijia listened in silence, and suddenly remembered the year he left home at 12 to enter the sect. He remembered how his elder brother Li Zicheng had used his savings to buy him an embryonic breathing realm jade pendant. That year, Li Zicheng had insisted on placing it in his hand. Coming from the Zhao family on his mother's side, and with his father then the family head, Li Zijia had grown up in luxury. Holding that jade felt like grasping burning coal. The jade pendant wasn't even as refined as those issued to Azure Pond sect disciples. Yet he had worn it for years, fastened to his wrist until he no longer noticed it. Now he felt the cool touch of the pendant against his skin, its presence suddenly sharp. Hearing the words "no surplus wealth," an ache welled in his chest. Li Zijian, who had spent many years with his elder brother, felt it even more deeply. His heart grew heavy. Elder brother always believed he had stolen Ximing's rightful place. He treaded as if on thin ice. Though called a young master, he never received a young master's due, not even from himself. As he was lost in thought, several family elders began murmuring among themselves. Li Zijia turned his head toward Li Zijian and spoke gently. Elder brother was never one for words, only action. When Ximing emerges from seclusion, someone must tell him. That burden he threw down at 18, our elder brother carried all of it, and he carried it well. Chapter 727, Chenghui, I. Heaven and earth reflected within the mirror. The world was shrouded in gloom. Moon-white buildings lined up in neat rows, nestled among the rocky terrain. These jade-like palaces were mostly curved and gleaming, with massive stone beasts crouching along the cliffs. All of it appeared silver-white under the moonlight. Lu Jiangxian sat quietly before the jade table, a faint azure glow emerging in front of him. The moment Kai Buzi appeared on Zongquan Island, Lu Jiangxian was jolted awake. The contingency he had left within Kai Buzi's soul quickly transmitted everything back. Various scenes of the Eastern Sea flickered through his pupils. 2 seconds later, Lu Jiangxian once again sat properly at the jade table. Kai Buzi. Back then, Lu Jiangxian implanted a hidden trick in Kai Buzi's soul. It was partly to steal memories and partly to suppress him. Now, having obtained the immortal official's memories, he immediately sensed something was wrong, if memories were transmitted back. Then the contingency within the soul must still be active. Lu Jiangxian frowned and reviewed the memories. Sure enough, over the years, Kai Buzi had engaged in a battle of wits with the immortal official from the Water Mansion, wandering all across the 4 seas in search of traces of the so-called immortal court. Those memories had been hastily fabricated by Lu Jiangxian to explain the immortal official's origins. How could they match reality? After circling the 4 seas, both man and soul realized something was amiss. Yet, this realm's Taoist traditions resembled those of their previous life while differing in many ways. Various Tao seed techniques had real foundations. After a brief quarrel, the split soul had to admit that the immortal court had indeed collapsed and vanished during some ancient immortal devil war. The immortal official's soul was originally a fragment of Maha Jinlian Maha, a being of strange and demonic origin. Upon realizing the immortal court was gone, it immediately developed wicked intentions and sought to seize Kai Buzi's body and live again. The two battled endlessly. One was a Purple Mansion Realm Taoist master, an old devil from Azure Pond sect. The other fancied himself a man of the righteous path, yet was equally cunning. They schemed against each other for over a decade. In the end, Kai Buzi succeeded in assimilating the talisman Qi, and the immortal official was devoured. Yet the radiance in Lu Jiangxian's hand clearly confirmed that the immortal official had, over the years, mastered the soul arts of this path, and might still be hiding somewhere deep in Kai Buzi's soul. That restriction within Kai Buzi's soul still shimmered faintly. Despite their bitter battle of cunning and betrayal, neither Kai Buzi nor the immortal official had touched that seal. It was as if they had a mutual, unspoken agreement. Lu Jiangxian sat silently upon the jade throne for. He was no longer the same man he once was. In his heart, he speculated, Kai Buzi might very well know the immortal official isn't dead. Perhaps he doesn't dare kill someone connected to me, deliberately handing over leverage to make me think he's under control. As for joining forces against Pristine Water, Lu Jiangxian naturally had no impulse to confront Pristine Water now. The more he understood this world, the more cautious he became. All he wanted was to focus on restoring the mirror. Why would he provoke Pristine Water? I can't even step out of the mirror. How could I possibly drag him down from his fruition attainment? Thought Lu Jiangxian. Those figures were still fighting beyond the outer heavens. His true body was hidden in the great void, and he could faintly sense its tremors. If he revealed even the slightest trace, he feared he'd be immediately perceived. Shang Yuan has ascended to become a true monarch. Lu Jiangxian set aside the numerous techniques and spell arts in those memories for now. He stirred his divine senses, and indeed found that the various shamanic talisman Dao arts he'd previously developed had all changed. There was an added ingredient of Jade True Essence catalyst that made them quite different. He sat quietly before the stone table, calculating inwardly, over the past century, I've come to gradually understand this world. Not only the Purple Mansion Realm cultivators, but even many Golden Core Realm cultivators are now familiar to me. In Yue State, there's Azure Pond Sex Pristine Water, Golden Feather Sex Taiyuan, and Yue Cultivating Sex Teiyu. That makes 3 true monarchs. Wu State is similar in size to Yue, and I only know about Changhuai's Teiyi. There are probably 2 or 3 there as well. So Jiangnan should have around 6 true monarchs. The Eastern Sea has 2 dragon kin. I've heard Valley Water is among them. The Northern Sea reportedly has 2, and the Southern Sea is about the same size as the East. Altogether, the 4 seas should have about 9. And then there are the Wang and Zai families, Mount Luoxia, the underworld. There's quite a number overall. By his calculations, the immortal Tao alone had 10 true monarchs, clearly dominant. No wonder the northern Buddhists had kept their heads down all this time. And as for ancient true monarchs, there must be even more of them. From the immortal official's memories, Lu Jiangxian had gathered much information. What he desired most, however, was to trace his own origins, for it was very possible that he had a previous life and had been the lord of the Moonlight Origin Mansion. After reviewing everything, he still felt that the identity of Ying's was the most likely. First, his mirror was a treasure of Moonlight origin. It was said the Moonlight Origin Mansion possessed the Sun-Moon Profound Light, possibly formed from both the Supreme Yin Profound Light and Supreme Yang Profound Light. It was a perfect match for Ying's, which symbolized both Yin and Yang. Second, Ying's belonged to Green Pine Temple, and the Sunseeker ring bore the inscription Green Pine Temple Lu Jiangxian. This was another match. But most importantly, Green Pine Temple's grotto heaven reflected itself above and below. Wasn't that exactly like a mirror? And that grotto heaven had been forged by Ying's. With these 3 clues aligning, Ying's seemed the most likely identity. The Golden Feather Sex Taiyuan called Ying's senior, so Ying's must have been at least a true monarch, possibly even a Tao embryo. But things weren't so easily concluded. 2 matters still left him uncertain, he thought. The Lord of Moonlight Origin Mansion was said to be an immortal lord. Ying's might fall short of that. And Li Jiangquan has seen me, which means I was still active in the more recent ancient times, while Ying seems to have perished long ago. So he could only list Ying's as a suspect for now. He continued thinking, in any case, at least 5 true monarchs are lying in wait for this Ying's. Mount Luoxia has a Tao embryo, and so does the underworld. Exposure must be avoided at all costs. He hadn't even considered Kai Buzi's suggestion, as he only found the man troublesome. With a sigh, he muttered, at the very least, Pristine Water is in a bad spot. He's bound to suffer injuries this time and will have no energy to manage those beneath him. He conjured those memories into form, and soon a collection of ancient texts that were all stored within azure jade slips appeared before him. Kai Buzi had been cautious, only allowing him to see the Foundation Establishment Realm chapters of Azure Pond sect techniques. But Pristine Water's 5 Taos were all complete. He specially selected these 5 paths, which were dark floating compliant cloud sutra, lucid marsh profound cave sutra, ugly sunflower water-seeking method, clear serenity dusk sutra, and dew tribulation falling petal art. These corresponded to pristine water's 5 techniques: heavy murk, spring's echo, sunflower concealment, clear dusk rain, and purging dew. Lu Zhongxian set them aside for now. Naturally, he wouldn't allow the Li family to cultivate these techniques. They would serve only as references for his own spell art and the study materials related to the pristine water origin talisman essence. After all, the path of pristine water was closely tied to talismans. In Jiangnan, talismans were easily refined. Perhaps this connection would offer some inspiration, thought Lu Zhongxian. Chapter 728, Chenghui II. Lu Zhongxian didn't examine the rest of Azure Ponsec's techniques in detail. He just glanced through several spell arts that all bore distinct characteristics of Azure Pon's methods and footwork techniques. After a full review, he stumbled upon something interesting. It was an old biographical text that Kai Busey had specifically found, hoping the split soul might recognize someone within it. The book was quite peculiar. The author's surname was Chen Xuingxiang. Lu Zhongxian brought it forth, transforming it into a small book he held in his hands. On the 21st day of the 11th month in the year before winter, in the early days after the chaos settled, I was betrothed young to a Li lady. I returned with my mother to Ning State and gained the service of 2 retainers, Zio and Quan. I traveled south and roamed all across Jiangnan. This man had lived long ago, nearly 1,000 years prior, during the flourishing era of the Yuan family when the Dongli sect still existed. Remarkably, the text recorded news of the 6 sons of Changming. Teiyu, Tei, and Teiyu shone brightly in the lead. Taixu, Teiju, and Taking rose in their wake. The Dao lineage of Green Pine glowed brilliantly in the near-ancient era. Lu Zhongxian studied it closely, matching each name one by one. A strange feeling welled up in his heart, so that means these were all disciples of Ying's, one sect with 4 golden cores realm cultivators, maybe even 6. Doubt lingered in his heart and he mused silently, just what kind of Dao lineage was Green Pine Temple, Zongquan Island. Li Qinghong waited a while inside the cave dwelling, but no response came. Even Kai Busey's presence had vanished. The spring within the cave, once murky, had returned to clarity and the tinkling sound of flowing water had disappeared. She exhaled softly in the cave and did not dare to think too much. Turning back, she exited the residence. All was utterly still. Zongquan Island was cloaked in night, the formation intact, without a single disturbance or ripple of alarm. Just outside was the ritual platform of the profound thunderpool. Li Chenghui was seated upright upon it in cultivation, barely 3 meters from the cave entrance. He had sensed nothing, not even the sound of knocking had reached his ears. Li Qinghong stepped lightly outside. The starlit sky above was bright and serene. After enduring the falling of the sea, the dragon swallowing the purple pearl and the arrival of a purple mansion realm cultivator, even someone as resolute as she no longer had the heart to cultivate. She had barely stepped out when Li Chenghui, nearby, was instantly roused. He rose steadily and said in a deep voice, "Aunt, the matter the family asked us to investigate some years ago, we've finally found a lead." Li Qinghong immediately understood and asked, "Is it regarding the Bright Yang treasure?" She had received a letter from Li Zijun, instructing her to keep an eye out for several Bright Yang treasures in the Eastern Sea to assist Li Ziming's breakthrough to the Purple Mansion realm. Despite her efforts to investigate, there had been no results. Now reminded, she thought in her heart, a Purple Mansion realm cultivator could take our lives as easily as reaching into a sack. Ziming is already at the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm. How many secret techniques has he mastered, and what are his chances? But Li Chenghui had uncovered something else and simply said, "There's a Dao lineage in the Scarlet Pristine Sea that cultivates Bright Yang. It's located in a remote area to the east, and we've now found its exact location. We might pay them a visit, perhaps it will yield something." Li Qinghong asked for more details, and Li Chenghui presented a jade slip. Within, everything was meticulously recorded. Even the estimated truthfulness of the gathered information and how the retreating sea might alter the terrain for easier identification were recorded down. He also offered a detailed report on recent changes to the island, such as how much land had been revealed as the sea receded, how it was managed, and how it was fairly distributed between the incoming family members and the native residents. Everything was orderly and transparent. Li Qinghong read through it, and the worry in her brows eased slightly. She spoke gently, "Good child. Among the radiant lure generation, only Qingliao, Minggong, and you have proven yourselves." Qingliao is now the family head, and Minggong is gradually taking hold of family affairs. Only you remain here with me at the far edge of the sea. It's been hard on you. Your elder brother, he didn't send you here out of disregard. The family simply had no one else suitable. Please try to understand. Li Chenghui shook his head. He had always been silent and unambitious, diligently handling family matters with order and fairness. He never spoke of right or wrong. It was rare for him to speak in a deep tone, whether by reason or sentiment. Even considering the heir, eldest brother is the family head. I know my own abilities well. Managing this small island is more than enough for me. He added quietly, the three of us cultivated together since childhood, yet our cultivation cannot compare to our elders. We are far from it. Whenever this is discussed, I feel uneasy and unworthy. Things as they are now are good. I am content. What Li Chenghui said could be called the shared burden of the entire Radiant Lure generation. From eldest Li Qingliao to youngest Li Chenghui, they simply could not match the former generation. No matter how hard these sons worked in cultivation, they found themselves far behind the records left by their fathers and grandfathers. No effort seemed enough. And then came Li Xiaowei, rising like the morning sun, which made all others seem dim in comparison. These children were sincere and clever. They looked at one another and felt unworthy of their place on the Qingdu rolls. This eventually led to the Radiant Lure generation's voice within the family growing faint. Most did not dare not speak up at all. Li Qinghang understood all this. Li Zijin had written to her several times on the matter. Nowadays, it was increasingly difficult to bestow talisman seeds, which meant one could not receive the formal initiations. The younger generation already lacked talent. Without these two supports, how could they possibly catch up? As for the heir Li Xiaowei, Li Qinghang naturally held great hopes, but she had seen too much in her life. What was highly anticipated often fails, and what was done without expectation often succeeds. Back when she left Li Chenghui to cultivate the thunder arts, she had her own reasons. She simply encouraged him by saying, "I've prepared various pills for you." Now with water falling and thunder rising, cultivation progresses quickly. It's the perfect time to break through to the Foundation establishment realm. To speak frankly, you're the only one in Radiant Lure who still has a real chance. Work hard on the island. The mainland shifts constantly, and a Purple Mansion realm breakthrough is a remote hope. Success means joining the immortal families. Failure. If something changes in the family and we're no longer here, someone must remain at Foundation establishment realm to steady things. Whether retreating overseas or gathering remnants, at the very least you must reach Foundation establishment realm. After Qinghang had spoken to such an extent, Li Chenghui was startled. He stared at her blankly for a moment, then understood. He bowed deeply and said solemnly, "I, Chenghui, will keep this firmly in heart and dare not slacken." Li Qinghang nodded, then soared into the sky on lightning, speeding off in the direction marked on the jade slip. Li Chenghui stood quietly for a moment. Li Chenghui had once been content. As one of the top Qingdu scholars in the family, governing a small island was effortless for him. He had simply wished to manage it well and await reassignment from the family. But Li Qinghang had seemingly seen through his heart. Her words stirred something in him. Though his eyes remained lowered, there was now a subtle gleam within them. He sat back down in meditation, restraining the surge in his chest as he faintly resonated with the thunderclouds above. If the family falls into turmoil, then I shall be the contingency. I will bear a spear and ride thunder into the fray. Chapter 729. After Yuan Tuan's death, purple smoke blessed land. Purple mist drifted ethereally. Cloud smoke blanketed the mountain peaks. Since Li Xuanfeng was personally brought back by a Taoist master, the cultivators of the Purple Smoke Gate treated him with great courtesy and arranged a cave dwelling for him on the main peak. Although his Tao lineage had nothing to do with the purple essence, the area at least had an abundant spirit vein and rich spiritual energy, which greatly benefited his cultivation. Had he cultivated here earlier in life, he might have broken through a few years sooner. Unfortunately, my path of cultivation is gradually coming to an end, thought Li Xuanfeng. Li Xuanfeng's cultivation method only allowed him to reach the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm. It lacked the chapters to break through to the Purple Mansion realm. His cultivation had slowly reached a bottleneck, just like Tang Shedu and the like, stuck in the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm. Even if he had time to practice secret techniques, he had no matching cultivation method to accompany them. Li Xuanfeng could only regulate his breath to the peak and slowly practiced footwork techniques and perception arts. After a few days of cultivation here, Taoist Master Yuan Ziyu soon arrived with his people, openly tearing through the skies above the blessed land. Li Xuanfeng, who was cultivating in the mountains, looked up and saw a man being carried in Yuan Ziyu's hand. Upon closer look, it was Ning Heiyuan. To be cautious, Taoist Master Zaipai summoned Li Xuanfeng. Upon returning to the cave filled with fluctuating purple qi, he saw 3 Taoist masters seated in a circle, with Ning Heiyuan standing dazed in the center. The impact of Ning Tianxiao's death on Ning Heiyuan was far beyond what Li Xuanfeng had experienced. Yuan Su's place in Ning Heiyuan's heart was likely greater to how Li Tongya once regarded the Li family. Li Xuanfeng saw him standing respectfully, yet his eyes were vacant, as if his mind was elsewhere. Just as Li Xuanfeng stood still, Zaipai spoke up and asked, "Li Xuanfeng, is this person a descendant of Yuan Su's lineage?" Seeing Li Xuanfeng nod in response, Zaipai turned to Taoist Master Pu Yu, who performed a divination. The result was roughly accurate, so Zaipai took out a small seal from his sleeve and said softly, "Ning Heiyuan." "This junior is here," replied Ning Heiyuan, nodding respectfully. Zaipai placed the seal in her palm, seemingly lost in some old memories. After a moment of thought, she said, "Yuansu never liked hearing about the past and perhaps never spoke of it to you. Since I preserved this item for him, I must also tell you of its origin so you know whose grace you are receiving." As she finished, Taoist Master Puyu nodded slightly, while Yuan Ziu turned his face away and remained silent. Li Xuanfeng silently understood in his heart. "I've always heard that this one from the Purple Smoke Gate was at odds with Yuan Su, but it seems they knew each other in the past and simply had a falling out. In the end, she still helped him preserve much." Zaipai spoke softly. "This seal is the Xinyu Lucid Marsh Seal, forged from Xinyu Profound Metal, Tai Pristine Essence, and Langya Jade. It is an ancient seal, and sealed within it is the pristine water feathered serpent. This ancient seal was originally a Dharma artifact of a Purple Mansion realm great demonic beast under the feathered serpent. Later, it was defeated by a senior from the Moonlight Origin Mansion and came into the hands of the Immortal Mansion, where it was refined by moonlight. Eventually, it came into the possession of Taoist Master Donghu of the Immortal Mansion, who then gifted it to Ning Tianxiao." Taoist Master Zaipai spoke clearly and without reservation. Li Xuanfeng listened quietly from the side and understood everything. The attitudes of the three sects and seven gates toward Taoist Master Donghua had always been ambiguous. Publicly, they credited him as a beneficiary of the Immortal Mansion's legacy, but many rumors claimed he was actually a direct inheritor. Now, with a first-hand account from someone who had personally witnessed those events, it was a clear confirmation. It was one that contradicted the official records of the sect. Ning Heiyuan didn't dare speak further and accepted the seal with both hands. Zaipai spoke softly, "This treasure. Both Qiyeshui and I used it back in the day. There are 12 incantations. I will now pass them to you, remember them well." Si Boxiu stood with his hands behind his back, his rigid face cold and expressionless. He simply flicked his sleeve and vanished into the great void. Taoist Master Puyu also nodded in farewell. The jade seal in Ning Heiyuan's hands radiated brilliant light as streams of azure water manifested around him, and golden blue light flowed by his side. His eyes were tightly shut, as if communicating with the seal. Taoist Master Zaipai finished passing on the incantations, listened carefully for a moment, then flicked her sleeve and said, "Now that you've received the treasure, go back and cultivate it well." The two only felt a blur before their eyes as they were swept out of the blessed land by a wave of her sleeve. Looking around, they had arrived at Libu Prefecture, on the easternmost edge of the Azure Pond sect. It was right at the border with the Purple Smoke Gate, and below them, the streets bustled with noise and bright lights. Ning Heiyuan and Li Xuanfeng both rode the spirit wind in midair to steady themselves. Ning Heiyuan held the seal close to his chest, still processing what had just happened, and muttered, "Why did it happen so fast?" He muttered to himself, unclear whether he was speaking of Zaipai's methods or Yuan Su. Li Xuanfeng stood silently behind him and then saw Ning Heiyuan speak with a slightly trembling voice. "Brother-in-law, do you have any other affairs to attend to, or will you return to the sect with me?" Ning Heiyuan gripped the Dharma seal tightly to the point where his fingers turned pale. His eyes shone brightly in the night as he fixed his gaze on Li Xuanfeng's expression. Li Xuanfeng remained as composed as ever, neither arrogant nor servile, and said softly, "I await the family head's instructions." With Yuan Su only just deceased, Li Xuanfeng's stance meant everything to Ning Heiyuan. This seasoned cultivator didn't need to do anything, just standing behind him gave Ning Heiyuan confidence. He immediately breathed a sigh of relief and quickly said, "If brother-in-law has matters to handle, feel free to go on your way, but if not, then return with me to the Ning family." Li Xuanfeng nodded and rose into the air with him. Ning Heiyuan made small talk along the way, and only after confirming that Li Xuanfeng's demeanor hadn't changed did he finally feel at ease. Ning Heiyuan paused for a moment and asked, "Did the Taoist master leave any final words or messages?" Li Xuanfeng gave a quiet nod and replied in a low voice, "Do not dare to hate." Chapter 730. After Yuan Tuan's death. Mushroom Forest Plain. Clouds drifted slowly above the Mushroom Forest Plain. Yuan Heiyuan stood quietly over the forested hills, watching the people below crawl like ants. The hands hidden within his sleeves had turned slightly pale. A band of heavenly glow approached from afar, dazzling and floating in the sky. Yuan Heiyuan instinctively prepared to retreat, but saw the glow take shape beneath the feet of a graceful young man. Senior Heiyuan, Li Zijai. The newcomer was indeed Li Zijai. Upon returning to the Li family, he had immediately received word from the sect that Yuan Tuan's soul lamp had gone out, and he had perished in the eastern sea. Upon receiving the news, and with Yuan Chengdun's pair of demon-subduing copper rods already returned to the Li family, Li Zijai rode the heavenly glow to seek out members of the Yuan family. Unbeknownst to him, a brief survey of the skies using his cultivated perception technique quickly revealed Yuan Heiyuan, who was quietly concealed above. Yuan Haiyun was nominally no longer part of the Yuan family, but in truth, it was merely a ruse orchestrated by him and his brother Yuan Hudu. Upon seeing Li Zizhai, Yuan Haiyun sighed inwardly. Both families clearly understood the current situation, so there was no need to hide. He cupped his hands and said, "Greetings, Taoist." Li Zizhai cupped his hands and said softly, "Master has fallen." Yuan Haiyun's aged face sagged, his brows tightly furrowed. He froze upon hearing the words and only said, "Oh, Tuaner has fallen." Of course, Li Zizhai knew his sister had been played by the Yuan family, but their patriarch Yuan Hudu had also been shot in full view of the public, utterly disgraced and now still recovering from his wounds. In the end, the scales had balanced somewhat. Li Zizhai simply asked, "The Dragon Clan needed Master as a key. The Yuan family couldn't have obtained the Azure Manifestation Dao lineage by chance. Your ancestors were disciples of Yanyang Temple, weren't they?" Li Zizhai stood still for a moment. The old man before him kept adjusting his sleeves, his wrists trembling slightly, never once meeting Li Zizhai's gaze. With a trembling voice, he said, "Yes, yes." The multicolored glow around Li Zizhai gradually dimmed as he asked, "Did Master know the truth? Was she forced out by people like you, or did she go willingly?" Yuan Haiyun had grown noticeably hunched and only said, "I don't know, Zizhai, I truly don't know." She was so clever that she must have known all along. Li Zizhai looked at his expression and sighed inwardly. Whether she went willingly or not no longer matters. She had to go either way. As Li Zizhai briefly drifted in thought, Yuan Haiyun was already drenched in sweat. Li Zizhai cast a quiet glance at him and said in a low voice, "You tricked Yuan Chengdan into leaving, didn't you?" Yuan Haiyun lowered his eyes and answered, "Yes." He thought he was going to rescue Yuan Tuan, but in truth, it was because he also cultivated the Azure Manifestation Dao. The Dragon Clan believed having another Azure Manifestation cultivator would increase their chances. Good. Li Zizhai understood and nodded. He cupped his hands, preparing to leave. Yuan Haiyun spoke as if trying to hold him back. "Zizhai. Back then, when Yuan Tuan brought Qijing back, I personally escorted him. He even called me senior. Li Tongya treated me with respect. Even Li Yuanping and Li Yuanjiao. I never imagined things would come to this." Li Zizhai simply cupped his hands in return and said softly, "Senior, the tides of the era bring gathering and parting. No personal feeling can stand in their way." He withdrew the demon-subduing copper rods from his sleeve and continued, "These belong to their rightful owner. Please take care of them." With that, Li Zizhai rode the wind and departed. Yuan Haiyun clutched his sleeves in unease, still dazed, when a strong herbal scent wafted over. Another figure had appeared before him. This man had a broad face and graying temples, with numerous medicine pouches hanging from his robes. Tears covered his gentle, kindly face, and his reddened eyes silently watched Yuan Haiyun. Yuan Haiyun could only kneel with a sorrowful cry and said, "Brother Yuanci." Zhao Yuanci couldn't speak. He merely waved his hand silently. The kind and honest old man reflected bitterly. Yuan Tuan had been missing for years, and not a single person had told him. It must have been orchestrated by that infallible Taoist master of our family. He cast a glance at Yuan Haiyun. Zhao Yuanci, never one to speak harshly, gently persuaded him to go home. Then he rode the wind alone, returning to the Zhao family. He had completely forgotten what he'd originally come to this place to do. In his mind, the scenery of Kingsui Peak from years ago resurfaced. Li Qijing reading with his sword in his arms, and Yuan Tuan tying his hair back, smiling brightly as she called him senior brother. 100 years in the blink of an eye, and I no longer even have the right to protect the junior sister who remains, muttered Zhao Yuanci, returning alone to Xianyu Peak. Mount Qingdu. Li Zizhen sat cross-legged beneath a pine tree, white snow drifting down upon his robes. After a moment, someone approached and respectfully said, "My lord, someone from Profound Peak Gate has arrived." "Send them up," said Li Zizhen. Li Zizhen waited briefly, and a strange young woman came forward. As expected, she was an envoy offering condolences for Li Zicheng's passing. Among the 3 sects and 7 gates, hers was the only one to do so. Kongqiuyan of Profound Peak Gate, greetings, Taoist friend. The woman appeared composed and confident, with a tall nose and delicate skin. She offered her respects before speaking gently. "I've long heard tales of the Li family's radiant frost pine snow. Now that I've seen you, I realize those weren't exaggerated at all." Li Zizhen responded politely, returned a few compliments, and asked about Profound Peak's recent affairs. Kongqiuyan answered gracefully and with appropriate formality, earning a slight nod from him. In recent years, he had broken through to the Foundation establishment realm and gradually taken control of Qingdu. With increasing public appearances, many surrounding families had heard his name, though oddly enough, it wasn't his abilities that first spread far and wide, but rather his graceful appearance. Eventually, every major power across several prefectures knew of the Li family's elegant, snow-clad young cultivator. The woman also gave him a couple of glances before finishing her formalities and retreating. Li Zizhen paid it no mind and asked, Has Ziming emerged from seclusion and descended the mountain yet? Seeing the man nod, he rose with the wind and made his way down the mountain. Li Zicheng's funeral had been ongoing for several months. White mourning cloths hung throughout the family, and Li family members from every township had returned. The event was grand in scale, and the central hall saw a constant flow of figures. It was mostly the family's core members. First, because Li Zicheng had supported many family men and was highly respected within the family. Second, because the second lineage was now in power, and Li Zicheng was the father of the current family head, so everyone felt the need to pay their respects. White cloths also hung in the central hall, fluttering gently in the air. Li Zicheng descended amid wind and snow, landing at the front steps just as he crossed paths with Li Xiaowei, who was slowly walking forward with a halberd in hand. Eighth uncle, Li Xiaowei nodded and cupped his hands in greeting. Li Zicheng helped him up with a soft nod, then followed him inside. Several others had already arrived and were quietly waiting. Li Xunfeng and Li Qinghang were absent, and Li Xuanxuan refused to take the main seat. As Li Zijai had returned rarely, and with Li Zicheng now present, everyone turned their gaze toward Li Zijai. But he only glanced around, shook his head and said softly, "I cultivate an Azure Pond sect and am not suited to preside. Let the eighth brother take the seat instead." Li Zicheng could only nod and take the seat. Famous for his handsome appearance, snowlights danced around him. At his side stood Li Zijai, who was graceful and radiant in heavenly glow, and Li Ziming, wreathed in crimson pill fire, arms folded. Li Ziming had just emerged from seclusion and was already at the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm. His cultivation speed was remarkable, and he had begun exploring secret techniques and pill arts, making him now one of the most powerful in the family. Aside from Li Xunfeng, both Li Qinghang and Li Ziming were in the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm. Then came Li Zijai and Li Wushao at the mid-stage, followed by Li Zicheng in the early stage. If Qinghang was included, the Li family's current Foundation establishment realm strength could be considered quite formidable. Li Ziming had just received news of his elder brother's death. Each time he emerged from seclusion, great events seemed to have occurred, and now he still felt somewhat dazed. Li Zijai was already speaking softly. "From what I've heard, Shang Yuan has successfully broken through, likely attaining the Jade True Fruition attainment. He was besieged by Pristine Water, Taiyuan, and Tei, two early-stage Golden Core Realm cultivators and one late-stage Golden Core Realm cultivator." He paused briefly and continued softly, "But one who has fruition attainment is not so easily slain. In years past, even when Yings killed the lesser Yang Devil Monarch, it still had to be split into 3 parts. How much more so with someone like him?" After saying this, Li Zijai drew a letter from his robes and said quietly, "My master. The soul lamp in the sect has gone out. In a few days I may have to return to take up the position of Kingsui Peak Master. I cannot stay long." Chapter 731, Chaos I. Just as he finished speaking, the sky outside the central hall suddenly flashed. Several streaks of light flew from north to south, leaving long trails across the sky. To the south, 5 bursts of heavenly glow rose into the air, dyeing half the sky red. As the heavenly glow drew near, its true form was revealed. A cloud ship wreathed in golden light, with wings like mist unfurled at its sides. It cut through layers of cloud, and atop it stood a gathering of shadowy figures. The Dawn Cloudliner. Li Zijai frowned and glanced upward. The command token at his waist began to glow. Each engraved character lit up one by one. His expression turned grave as he stared intently at the sky. Figures scattered across the Dawn Cloudliner, and dazzling lights streamed southward from the north. Li Zijai calmed his brothers, then rose on his own ribbon of glow, cloaked in swirling mist, and approached the cloud ship. He activated the glow in his hand and channeled his command token. Immediately, someone aboard the ship rode the wind over to him. The man's face was somewhat familiar. After a moment of scrutiny, he recognized Li Zijai as well. The man was short and plump with a well-fed appearance. As he neared Li Zijai, he opened his mouth and said, "Taoist friend." Only then did he recognize Li Zijai's cultivation level. His expression changed at once, plastering on a wide smile as he respectfully said, "Ah, greetings, senior. It's been so many years, and you've already reached the Foundation establishment realm." "So it's you," exclaimed Li Zijai. The man before him was Yu Fuyu of Lingdu Peak. Years ago, when Li Zijai had still been in the Qi cultivation realm, he had arranged a trade of sect duties with this very man to secure a trip home. Though he was from the Yu family, he had long severed ties with them, living modestly and alone. Afraid of Li Zijai's background, he now greeted him with excessive deference. "Senior, your cultivation has progressed with incredible speed." Though Li Zijai's progress had been swift, he couldn't compare to his own younger brother and was considered only upper mid-tier within the sect. He paid no mind to the flattery and asked directly, "What's going on here?" Yu Fuyu quickly said, "Senior, Yue cultivating sect has sealed its mountains and withdrawn deep inside. All cultivators stationed from the north of Su State to the eastern sea have pulled out completely. They've abandoned the front entirely." As a result, the large swath of Buddhist cultivators in northern Yue State, along with the devil cultivators who have been fleeing there year after year, are now completely unsupervised. They've already pushed into Sioux State. He seemed almost animated, saying, with Yue cultivating sect sealing itself off, they've tossed all former agreements aside. The 9 seaward passes are completely unguarded, without a word of warning. The route from the eastern sea to Sioux State is wide open, and who knows what kind of chaos is erupting now. He even showed a hint of pity as he continued, poor Sioux State. After decades of recovering from turmoil and finally showing some promise, now it's going to fall into a sea of blood once more. Li Zijai felt uneasy hearing this, but the scene before him was becoming clearer. He asked, so the sect has intervened? Exactly. Yu Fuyu replied, not just Azure Pond sect, even the Golden Feather sect has made a move. Li Zijai silently calculated the situation, then said with a sigh, this is getting serious. Have any Purple Mansion Realm cultivators made a move? Has there been any new Purple Mansion Realm cultivator in the sect? None that I've seen. Yu Fuyu nodded repeatedly and quickly added, quite a few seniors who attempted breakthroughs have fallen, many of them well-known figures, like Li Yancheng the Water Wall Pearl and Mo Chen the Golden Profound Eagle. At this, Li Zijai's heart gave a sudden jolt. He thought to himself, so Li Yancheng really did fail. It was something I'd long suspected. Though thought stirred in his heart, his expression remained calm and focused, giving nothing away. The old man before him noticed nothing and went on eagerly, saying, we're just the advance group heading to Sioux State. The sect has summoned all peak masters. Each peak has been assigned duties. Someone's probably already on their way to fetch you, senior. Li Zijai gave a slight nod. Seeing that the cloud ship was about to cross into Sioux State, he prepared to ride the wind away, but Yu Fuyu grew anxious and quickly said, Senior, my Lingdu Peak, we had strong ties with Kingsui in the past. My martial uncle and family elder Yu Yuxi. He was a close friend of Senior Si Yunbai. I am no good at combat. Li Zijai paused slightly, realization dawning. He thought, so this cloud ship is full of those aging cultivators who loaf around the sect. Now they've been sent to Sioux State as the vanguard, it won't end well for them. No wonder he's so desperate. Seeing Yu Fuyu's tearful expression, Li Zijai merely said softly, this isn't something I can decide on my own. I'll have to return to the sect first and inquire more carefully. If I can help you find a less dangerous posting, I'll do what I can. After he said this, it was clear Yu Fuyu didn't fully believe him. He barely managed to offer a couple words of thanks before Li Zijai disappeared on a streak of glow, leaving Yu Fuyu standing there in a daze. Moments later, a man in platinum white armor emerged from the ship's cabin, wielding a long halberd and exuding a commanding presence. He swept his gaze across the crowd, pointed at 2 people and said quietly, you and you, come with me, Tang Shedu. As that finger pointed toward him, a chill ran down Yu Fuyu's spine. Li Zijai descended on the wind and re-entered the hall, where his brothers awaited. Seeing the grave look on his face, they exchanged glances. Li Zijai quietly conveyed the news, and at the head of the hall, Li Zijin pulled out a map. Sioux State was situated between the Wu, Yue, and Zhao states, with a great river running through it. It bordered the Yue cultivating, Golden Feather, Azure Pond, and several Buddhist and Taoist sects. The point where Azure Pond sect touched Sioux State, right in the middle, was Moongaze Lake. Now that Yue cultivating sect had retracted its forces, it had effectively abandoned most of Sioux State, leaving only the isolated Golden Tang Gate behind. Northern Yue had become a blank void, and where the Profound Peak Gate met the eastern sea, the shoreline was now untended wilderness. All of the areas connecting to Sioux State were about to descend into chaos. The territory was vast, nearly as large as the entire influence range of Azure Pond sect, and it sat just north of Moongaze Lake and the Zhao family. Li Zijin studied the map closely, his expression grim and his voice heavy. I'm afraid this won't bode well for us. The Li family and Zhao family had become the shield of the Azure Pond sect. In the turmoil to come, they would not escape unscathed. What's worse, their family had long been enemies with the Buddhist cultivators, and now that Yue cultivating sect had opened the way, those Buddhist sects could march southward unchecked. Everyone present had clearly thought the same and remained silent. Li Zijai sighed and reminded them, this won't be simple. Azure Pond sect will definitely summon every family to contribute forces and send them to Sioux State. Our family won't be exempt. Li Zijai appeared deeply troubled and said softly, beyond that, something big may be brewing. The 3 sects and 7 gates are stirring restlessly. I doubt there will be peace for long. The refined man beside him gently shook his head and said warmly, a time of chaos is coming. He paused, hesitating briefly, then said in a low voice, there is news. Li Yancheng has passed. Chapter 732, Chaos II. Li Yancheng had been a key connection the Li family built in the past, thought to be useful when the time came. But fate was unpredictable. By the time of his final meditation, no opportunity had ever arisen to make use of that bond. Instead, the Li family had poured quite a bit into him. When he made his final breakthrough attempt, they even sent him a batch of spirit items. Now with this news, all of that had gone to waste. Li Xuanxuan, listening closely, said in a low voice, "It's not a total loss. He did give me an essence-gathering pill, so at least he didn't take our help for nothing." Li Zijai, occupied with preparing to return to the sect for inquiries, didn't linger. He cupped his hands to the others and said softly, "Keep watch over the family for now and await my letter." Li Qinghong rode Thunder through the skies for a while, noticing that the seawater beneath her was receding at an extremely slow rate. It was so slow that, without close observation, one might not even realize the sea was slowly drawing back. It's most likely the Dragon Clan making a move. According to the old agreements, everything beneath the sea belongs to them. With the sea receding like this, who knows how many treasures will be lost in just 10 days or half a month, she muttered. She then recalled the spiritual omen of the Eastern Sea, falling water, rising storm, and found it curious. She had thought it referred to heavy rainfall, but now the sea itself was truly falling, and thunder rumbled even more powerfully overhead. Continuing to ride the thunder, the Kunyi Strait appeared before her. The once scattered islets that could barely support a single person were now fully exposed due to the receding tide, revealing vast stretches of shoreline. Flying another 1,000 miles eastward, the distant silhouette of Shiki Island in the Kunyi Strait came into view, followed by the emergence of a large island ahead. The island was shielded by a radiant golden-red formation, glowing with brilliance. On the newly exposed land from the receding sea, a group of fishermen moved about, dragging brown nets, their faint laughter carrying through the air. But the laughter quickly vanished as her cultivator aura became visible. Those mortals fell to their knees in fear. Before Li Qinghong could speak, a streak of gold-white light shot toward her. It was a young woman, about 17 or 18, still youthful in appearance. She held a small golden ring and rode the wind toward Li Qinghong. Eyeing Li Qinghong warily, she asked, "Senior, are you here seeking someone or?" Seeing how guarded the girl was, Li Qinghong responded softly, "I am Li Qinghong, a cultivator from the mainland. I've come this time to inquire about some treasure-related news." A mainland cultivator. These words caused the girl's brows to relax slightly. She bowed respectfully and replied, "This junior, Kui Wongking, greets senior." Kui Wongking paused, a trace of doubt in her eyes, and asked, "Senior, which Li family do you belong to?" Li Qinghong paused briefly before replying, "The Moongaze Li family." Kui Wongking silently repeated the 4 words, guiding her toward the island as she muttered, "I've heard there's a great marsh in the mainland called Moongaze. Could it be that one?" Li Qinghong nodded and replied softly, "Correct. The marsh has dried up, leaving only a lake. My family cultivates beside it." Kui Wongking nodded thoughtfully and said quietly, "That makes sense. With no one holding the water mansion fruition attainment, it's natural that the wetlands would wither." From her words, it was clear she had inherited knowledge. Li Qinghong followed her down and took a seat in the courtyard, while Kui Wongking went to summon her elders. This was, after all, the Eastern Sea, where everyone remained cautious of one another. Naturally, Li Qinghong wouldn't recklessly step into someone else's formation. The hall Kui Wongking chose was specifically built on the island for receiving visitors, located safely outside the family's protective array. Soon after, an elder appeared at the edge of the courtyard. With solemn white whiskers and a stately posture, he wore a light blue robe. He was tall and spoke in a deep, composed voice. "I am Kui Changfu of Changzhou Island. Greetings, Taoist friend." The elder appeared to be of considerable age, with a cultivation at the late stage of the foundation establishment realm. His aura was imposing, and as he appraised Li Qinghong, his gaze paused for a moment on the jade bottle at her waist. Li Qinghong of Moongaze Lake. Sensing that this elder might be difficult to deal with, Li Qinghong kept silent until the old man sighed and said, "Then Wei Lixun has arrived, has he?" His tone was strange, and for a moment Li Qinghong didn't know how to respond. She simply shook her head lightly. The elder then said, "Please allow me to examine the Dharma bottle." Li Qinghong hesitated but removed it. Still, she grew tense as she worried that this elder, upon seeing the Dharma artifact, might covet it and try to seize it from her. She said nothing, her silence heavy with caution. Kui Changfu paused slightly, then seemed to understand and spoke gently. "The Kui family of Changzhou is currently under the protection of the Dragon Clan. We're not too big but not insignificant either. We still care about our reputation. I, Kui Changfu, am pretty well known in these waters. I wouldn't act against someone over a mere foundation establishment realm Dharma artifact. Besides, judging by your bearing, I doubt your family is some powerless little force in the mainland." Li Qinghong subtly assessed the terrain, gauging her distance from the formation. If the man before her were to suddenly attack, she might not win, but with her thunder-riding speed, she was confident she could at least escape. Only then did she relax slightly. She nodded, offered a few polite remarks, and carefully handed over the Dharma artifact. Kui Changfu took it, weighed it in his hand, and dimmed its glow before flipping it over. The purple vein-like pattern slowly dimmed, revealing several ancient seal script characters. "Li Qianyuan of the Wei State Li family." Kui Wongking let out a soft gasp and exclaimed, "The ancestor of Wei, Li Qianyuan." Both of their expressions turned complex, but in Li Qinghang's ears, the name struck like thunder in a calm sky. She stood stunned for a full breath, the ancestor of Wei. Of course, Li Qinghang had always known her bottle wasn't ordinary, that it had once belonged to a cultivator from the Wei state Li family, but she had never imagined it had such a prestigious origin. Hui Changfu returned it and said in a calm voice, but the Wei emperor was no ordinary figure. He wouldn't have used a mere Foundation establishment realm artifact. The authenticity of this item remains questionable. After all, I've never heard that the Wei emperor had a Dharma artifact shaped like a bottle. Either it was something he used early in life, or it's a replica crafted by later generations. At those words, Li Qinghang immediately felt relief, as though a great weight had lifted from her shoulders. She thought, those true monarchs, how many of them are simple? If something of his ended up in my hands, it must have been part of some grand plan. Even if this one has been dead for years, who can say what immortal arts a true monarch left behind? Oddly enough, the possibility that the artifact was a fake brought her comfort. She nodded slightly and tucked it back into her sleeve. Meanwhile, Hui Changfu was studying her closely, watching the subtle shifts in her expression. Having survived in the Eastern Sea for so many years, Hui Changfu was no fool. His guard had been up from the start, and he thought to himself, anyone with family history would know about the Kui clan's old ties with the Wei state Li family. This woman's artifact is far too conspicuous. I have to be cautious that she isn't posing as a descendant of the Wei state Li family to exploit us. But seeing her subtle shifts in expression unfold naturally, he couldn't quite make up his mind. In the end, he chose to wait and test further. He asked, and what brings Taoist friend here, if I may ask? Li Qinghang nodded and answered directly, not bothering with further pleasantries. I heard your lineage cultivates in Bright Yang across generations. My family lacks a Bright Yang treasure, so I've come here to inquire about it. Chapter 733, Peak Master I. Li Qinghang finished speaking, and Hui Changfu grew suspicious, asking softly, fellow Taoist, what kind of spirit item are you seeking? Li Qinghang replied softly, these things are hard to find inland from the Western Sea. They are Bright Yang Purple Mansion Realm spirit items such as the Radiant Celestial Stone, Killing Crow Spirit Husk, or White Blood Sap. No need for anything specific, just one of them will do. Upon hearing this, Hui Changfu's expression eased slightly, and he said with a smile, a Purple Mansion Realm spirit item. I once had a dose of Radiant's profound essence, but it's gone now. Li Qinghang was seeking these items to help a younger family member break through to the Purple Mansion Realm. It weighed on her mind. Although Purple Mansion Realm spirit items were hard to come by, and she hadn't held much hope, hearing this gave her a spark of interest. Her expression lit up and she asked, has it been traded to someone? Please share any information that you have. Hui Changfu finally believed her. This woman was indeed here for a spirit item. He seemed relieved and much less wary, speaking in a low voice. Our branch was once sent by Wei State's Emperor Gong to venture beyond the outer seas searching for Pinglai. Emperor Gong was broad-minded and elegant. His reign was prosperous and generous, so our treasure ship carried many rare items. Later, chaos engulfed the sea, the great void shattered, and we lost contact. By the time the Qi state replaced Wei state, there was no news at all. The spirit items we had were used up one by one, until only 2 portions of Radiant's profound essence remained. Li Qinghang listened closely as he continued. 1 portion was given long ago to the dragon family. Dongfeng Yu drank it and gave birth to Dingyuan the dragon's son. The other portion was sent to Mount Changhui, where a Taoist master used it to sire a child, who I've heard is called Qing Jifeng. It was all thanks to the Radiant's profound essence. Li Qinghang listened for a while and realized both doses had already been used. She was immediately disappointed. Hui Changfu noticed this and said softly, don't be discouraged, fellow Taoist. When the Eastern Fire Grotto heaven fell, I heard it was overseen by the 2 Taoist masters, Yuan Su and Qiushui. That grotto heaven surely contained Purple Mansion Realm spirit items. Even if Chu Yi looted most of it, the Taoist masters went there afterward. Surely they got their hands on something. When Hui Changfu mentioned Chu Yi, his tone grew awkward, his lips quivered slightly and he lowered his eyes. Yet his words were like a bell ringing through a dream. Li Qinghang suddenly understood and her heart lit up with joy. That's it. She hadn't known before that the Eastern Fire Grotto heaven had passed through Yuan Su's hands. Now that she realized it, he must surely possess Purple Mansion Realm spirit items. And since her second uncle served under Yuan Su, asking for them might not be too difficult. At the moment, she cupped her hands in thanks and said, many thanks, senior. Hui Changfu gave her a close look, stroked his beard, and nodded. Li Qinghang hesitated for a moment but still spoke up, there is one more matter. My family also cultivates under the Bright Yang Dao lineage. We are hoping to gather 5 immortal foundations to pave a smoother path for our family. Since the request wasn't an easy one, she lowered her stance and continued softly, if it's convenient, I hope to borrow access to your esteemed family's Dao lineage. We can exchange it with techniques, or Dharma artifacts, or even spirit items, whatever your family desires. If you are unwilling, I have no intention whatsoever of prying into your Dao lineage. Li Qingheng added a few more apologetic words. Qi Wangqing's expression remained fairly warm, even slightly moved. But the old man of the Qi family did not have the best look on his face. Qi Chengfu responded in a hoarse voice, I'm afraid, our ancestral Dao lineage cannot be shared. He rejected her firmly. Li Qingheng apologized, then took a spirit flower from her storage pouch and handed it to the two of them, saying softly, Thank you for the information, senior. This is the Wanglin blossom. It can preserve life and ease sorrow. Please accept it as a token of gratitude. Fearing her prolonged presence might cause unease, she rode lightning into the sky and took her leave. Qi Wangqing seemed to have a good impression of her and saw her off, gently saying, Take care, senior. After sending Li Qingheng off, Qi Wangqing returned to the island only to see Qi Chengfu still sitting where he was, tapping the table restlessly. His aged eyes were full of unease. Curious, Qi Wangqing sat down beside the old man and asked softly, Grandfather, this senior Qingheng seems like a straightforward person. Her family has quite a few people with bright Yang Dao lineage. It's not like they're all one of a kind. At worst, sharing one could be mutually beneficial. Qi Chengfu stroked his beard and didn't respond immediately. He said in a low voice, She may truly be a remnant of Wei's Li descendant. He pulled out a jade slip from his storage pouch, examined it carefully, then took out a map and studied it closely. He murmured, Mungei's marsh lies in Jiangnan. When Emperor Wu campaigned south, he passed through there and met immortals within the marsh. Could a surviving bloodline really? Qi Wangqing was visibly moved and said quietly, If she's truly from the imperial family of old, grandfather, why not help them? At most, it's just a technique being exchanged, and we'd gain something in return anyway. Qi Chengfu shook his head and said softly, Not anymore. His expression suddenly became animated, his eyes sharp and piercing as he said, Wasn't the pain already enough? When Northern Qi State replaced Wei State, Li Zengquan raised an army in rebellion. Our ancestors crossed the seas carrying precious treasures to aid him, only to have their heads hung over Dianyang City for 9 years, never taken down. When Li Xuan restored the empire, our great ancestors rushed to his side, taking with him 2 brilliant great-uncles. The kingdom fell again and they were slain. We lost 3 Dharma artifacts, and even our treasure ship was left behind in Sioux State. When the Dongli sect was founded, my grandfather hadn't even reached the Purple Mansion realm. He rode the wind to join them, handed over all of Changzhou Island to the Dongli sect only for the Dongli Taoist master to die suddenly. The sect to collapse and my grandfather perished in battle. If Dongfeng Yu hadn't come seeking a spirit item just then, we would have already. He sighed and said softly, At this point, we truly can't afford any more turmoil. Qi Chengfu's expression grew grim as he continued, Mungei's marsh lies in a land torn by 4 powers. Tei to the west, taking to the south and east, and the 7 releases to the north. What good position is that? Even Li Zengquan had true monarchs aiding him and Purple Mansion realm cultivators following him, yet he still lost and died in defeat. This one is at least wise, not driven by greed to openly claim the name of Wei Lei, but that's as far as it should go. Only disaster awaits if we get too deeply involved with them. After hearing this, Qi Wangqing could only sigh and nod. Then she heard Qi Chengfu say, We must preserve our remaining lineage. Only then will there be a chance to restore what was lost. If we follow any passing branch of the Wei Li bloodline without caution, that would be blind folly, with no hope at all. The conversation between the 2 members of the Qi family in Changzhou naturally didn't reach Li Qingheng's ears. She rode the wind back on her journey, feeling a twinge of disappointment. She had only made the request in the hope that the long-standing friendship between the Li and Qi families might help. Even hearing a condition would have been something, but Qi Chengfu clearly wanted nothing to do with any karmic entanglements. His tone showed no softness. Li Qingheng saw this clearly, thus she didn't push the matter and quickly took her leave. After all, so many years have passed, and the Qi family suffered plenty of entanglements. They won't trust easily. Muttered Li Qingheng. The last immortal devil war had ended with the Battle of Pingaming Ford. Then Northern Qi replaced Wei, only to fall to Liang, which in turn was destroyed by Emperor Zhao's father Fu Qian and King Yan Murong de Chang. That was over 1600 years ago. If the world hadn't changed since, even a true monarch would have long passed away. Perhaps the old bonds had faded with time. Later, when Dongli's sect was destroyed, many from the Qi family died too. Showing even a decent attitude when facing someone from the Li family, whose identity might not even be real. That's already more than fair. Thinking this way, Li Qingheng felt the Qi family's reaction was understandable. She glanced westward and suddenly saw several dawn cloudliners tearing through the sky, leaving trails of heavenly glow behind. The cloudliner was massive and radiated colorful light. Having paid tribute to one before, Li Qingheng instantly recognized it as the Heavenly Glow Dawn Cloudliner. Her heart jumped in alarm. Something's happened inland. Chapter 734, Peak Master II, Azure Pond Sect. Azure Pond Sect was usually shrouded in mist and clear clouds, but perhaps due to the repeated failures and deaths during the breakthrough attempts to the Foundation establishment realm in recent months, the clouds now seemed much thinner. From within the distant clouds, a streak of heavenly glow sped forth with six-colored trails. The man atop it was elegant and noble. It was none other than Li Zijai. Li Zijai, riding the heavenly glow, rushed back from outside. As he entered the sect, he saw people bustling around. Landing atop Kingsui Peak, he was quickly greeted by his junior brother Yuan Chengzhou. Yuan Chengzhou had not yet broken through to the Foundation establishment realm. He was at the peak of Qi cultivation realm. Holding a Dharma artifact in hand, he looked a bit flustered. Among this generation of the Yuan family, only Yuan Chengdan had unmatched strength. He was one of the rare cultivators capable of contending with direct disciples of the great sects. Unfortunately, he had perished in the Eastern Sea. Of the remaining younger ones, only Yuan Chengzhou had any chance of a breakthrough. The Yuan family's former pillar, Yuan Tuan, had also fallen in the Eastern Sea. Though the family's numbers remained intact, with these two core figures gone, they had no strong Foundation establishment realm cultivators left to speak of. Though they now had the Kai family's support, pressure still loomed large. Yuan Chengzhou, staying in the sect, felt especially awkward. He sat blankly atop the peak and was unsure of how to face anyone. Now, seeing his senior brother Li Zijai, he was at even more of a loss, fumbling as he spoke, "Senior brother. I truly don't know anything about the family's affairs. None of this is your fault, of course." Li Zijai frowned slightly, noticing with sharp eyes that Yuan Chengzhou's clothes were thin yet immaculately white. It was subtly of higher quality than the average sect disciple's garb. He smiled gently and said, "What's this? You've got new clothes now, I see." Yuan Chengzhou finally realized what was happening and was momentarily speechless. He then said in a low voice, "This. Senior brother, come with me up the mountain." Li Zijai's smile gradually faded. He followed quietly behind until they reached the small pavilion at the mountaintop, where the lights were dim and a piece of clothing lay draped messily over the desk. Li Zijai knew this little room like the back of his hand. With just one glance, he noticed that the sharp green-bladed sword that once hung on the wall had been taken down. It was nowhere to be seen. Sweat formed on Yuan Chengzhou's brow. He led Li Zijai inside and, upon reaching the desk, dropped to his knees with a thud. He bowed in silence. Li Zijai seemed to have expected this. His expression was calm as his gaze swept over the robe draped on the desk. The robe was a pale bluish-green, seamless in its make, and glowed faintly with multicolored light. A silver ornament dangled awkwardly from the waist, haphazardly tossed on the corner of the desk. Of course, Li Zijai knew exactly what this garment was. It was the robe of the Peak Master. Looking again at Yuan Chengzhou's inner garments that were pure white and flowing, it was clear they were part of the same set as the robe on the desk. But with Li Zijai's sudden return, Yuan Chengzhou had only managed to remove the outer robe in a hurry, forgetting about the underlayer before rushing to meet him. Senior brother. The contrast made everything obvious. Yuan Chengzhou kept his head very low, sweating profusely. Yet Li Zijai didn't seem angry. His voice was cool as he asked, "The sword." Compared to the Peak Master's position, it seemed he cared more about the sword that used to hang on the wall, the one once wielded by Li Qijing. With Yuan Tuan's whereabouts uncertain, Yuan Chengzhou had long lived under the discipline of his senior brother Li Zijai and had a deep sense of awe toward him. Now he was stumbling over his words. Although this senior brother was graceful and refined, back when he'd misbehaved, Li Zijai had truly scolded him coldly and disciplined him with a ruler. Now, with red-rimmed eyes, he trembled as he said, "Senior brother, the Kai family is coming. I was afraid they'd recognize Uncle's sword, so I hid it ahead of time." He hurriedly retrieved the sword from his storage pouch and offered it with both hands. Before Li Qijing had forged his spirit sword, he had used this very one to cultivate the profound water sword technique. The blade was simple, without any ornate designs. Li Zijai received it with both hands, then took out a jade box from his own storage pouch and carefully stored the sword away before speaking gently. "The Kai family personally appointed you." Yuan Chengzhou nodded repeatedly, forcing himself to respond, "Yes, yes." They used the family as leverage, saying I absolutely had to take the Peak Master's position. Li Zijai's expression didn't change much. He nodded lightly, used one hand to help him up, and with the other lifted the green robe from the desk and draped it over him, smiling as he said, Your cultivation is still a bit lacking. Once you reach the Foundation establishment realm, you'll be able to hold the stage properly." Yuan Chengzhou began sweating even more, beads falling down as he muttered, "Senior brother. This was meant to be yours. I know the master thought the same. It's always been yours. I had no power to resist. What's mine or yours?" Li Zijai chuckled softly, patted his shoulder and said gently, "I've returned after completing my task and still need to report to the main hall. Peak Master Yuan, you wait here first. Once I'm back, you and I shall have a proper drink." Yuan Chengzhou was at a complete loss and simply nodded. It wasn't until Li Zijai rode off on the heavenly glow light that he hastily pulled off the outer robe and tossed it back onto the desk, feeling as if he were in a dream. "Senior brother's not angry at me. Thank the heavens." He sat there dazed for a while, staring at the silver pendant that symbolized the position of Peak Master. His hands grew hot with excitement, and he couldn't help but touch it twice. Meanwhile, Li Zijai rose on the wind, stepping through the moonlight and glow. His expression was gentle, but his eyes were cold. One hand was clasped behind his back, posture poised as he thought, trying to manipulate me. You think this was Kai Jian's oversight? Unlikely. What a clever ploy. Cheng Zhao's not cunning, and he craves status. It's only natural he'd fall into this trap. King Sui Peak is still in the hands of the Yuan family. 9 out of 10, this was a reward for them. And in the end, they still get to strike a blow at me. He looked refined and calm, wearing just the right trace of displeasure on his face, but inside there was no anger, but only a cold smirk. My Li family has 7 Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators, the Profound Thunder Golden Bow, Bright Yang Rainbow Mist, and ties to the Xiao family in the east. Should anything arise, we could even force the Xiao, Ning, or Yang families to intervene. We have so many cultivators across the peaks of Moongaze Lake. They're a gift from the heavens, the perfect shield. Who among them would willingly give that up? At this moment, the calm elegance Li Zijai had cultivated since youth remained flawless, but inwardly his mind was calculating with precision. He was, after all, the son of Li Yunjiao. On the surface, he seemed gentle, but underneath, he had already seen everything with piercing clarity. At such a desperate moment, what else could this be but one hand wielding the stick, the other offering the sweet date? Very well, let's see what kind of performance the esteemed masters put on next. Chapter 735, Changshan Peak I. Li Zijai first arrived at the General Affairs Hall and returned the jade token. The cultivator in charge nodded politely and said respectfully, "Greetings, Taoist. Your cultivation truly progresses with remarkable speed." Li Zijai nodded slightly, and the man continued, "However, the merit you've earned will have to be withheld for now." Before Li Zijai could ask, he quickly added, "The sect sent someone to investigate. They found that you hadn't been on your peak for nearly half a year, and that you'd gone to Xia Mountain to gather glow for personal affairs. This was reported to the main peak. It was Taoist Kai Liang of Hongda Peak who reported it, and the matter reached the sect master himself, who's considering punishment." Li Zijai had already expected someone would seize this issue to make trouble, so he wasn't surprised. He asked, "Very well. Am I to be sent to Yuanxing Peak?" The man shook his head repeatedly and said in a low voice, "This matter didn't spread because the sect master suppressed it. He left a message here, asking you to visit the main hall upon your return." Li Zijai nodded, said nothing more, and rode his heavenly glow toward the Azure Pond sect's main hall. Mist swirled atop the jade tiles. A figure stood within. Li Zijai waited a moment before the dragon-carved and phoenix-painted doors until he was finally ill. He walked slowly into the hall, straightened his sleeves, and bowed loudly. "Zijai greets the sect master." The man above had already risen and came down quickly, using both hands to help him up, speaking gently, no need for such formality. Li Zijai rose accordingly and met his gaze. He saw a face with upright features and a neatly trimmed beard, eyes full of warmth. He lowered his gaze and said, "I stand as one awaiting punishment. I dare not speak freely." Kai Jian, however, took the chance to observe those handsome, slightly narrowed eyes, elegantly arched brows, and composed bearing. Then he thought to himself, just as the rumors say, he is not someone to provoke lightly. Kai Jian simply smiled and said, "I've long heard of your reputation, Zijai, and have been looking forward to meeting you. But you've often been away on tasks, and we've kept missing each other. Only now do I finally get to see you." Li Zijai cupped his hands in salute, but Kai Jian waved it off, cutting him short and pausing before saying, "That task at Xia Mountain was assigned by the Purple Mansion Realm cultivator. It was no personal errand, but some petty men are using it to slander you." He lifted his head and said with a laugh, "If it had been them, they'd have offered up their lives and fortunes at a single order from the Purple Mansion Realm cultivator. What face do they have to judge you?" Of course I would never believe them. Li Zijai made a show of gratitude, nodding with a slight bow. Kai Jian came forward eagerly, gripped his arm, and said in a low voice, "I know you've heard all kinds of rumors, saying the Kai family meant to harm you. Sai, this really is my fault. Some in my family still hold grudges from the past, thinking Qijing shamed me. What kind of logic is that? They lack perspective. When I went into seclusion, they deliberately sent you away." And snatched King Sui Peak. Kai Jian looked deeply embarrassed, painting a picture of remorse on his face, though his eyes remained alert, quietly studying Li Zijai's expression as he said with a sigh, "As fate would have it, you never ended up going to the Quinee, and it was the Han family brothers who paid the price instead." Li Zijai asked in confusion, "Quinee, what happened there? I only heard the Han family was present." "Ah, they were searching for news of my master on Azure Pond sect's behalf." Kai Jian sighed and said, "The Han family's master and servant both died. While investigating, they ran straight into the Dragon Clan's hands. You weren't there at the time. If you had been, you could have used your Azure Pond sect's credentials to get them out safely. What a pity. Those fools, in trying to push you aside and seize King Sui Peak, ended up getting the Han family killed instead." Li Zijie appeared visibly shocked but inwardly applauded him. What a clever redirection. What a graceful misdirection about saving them had I been there. If I hadn't actually gone myself, I really might have been fooled. Outwardly, Li Zijie only showed sorrow, saying softly, "It seems I've caused their deaths." Kaijian patted his shoulder and said gently, "This was my oversight in the I asked you here today to make it right, to restore fairness and return the peak master position to you." "I dare not," said Li Zijie. How could Li Zijie accept that now? His heart turned cold. If he reclaimed the position so directly, that would no longer be a mere falling out with the Yuan family, it would be a full-blown feud. From then on, the Yuan family wouldn't just distance themselves from the Li family, they would truly hate them, and the Li family would find itself beset on all sides. So he let guilt fill his face, choking with emotion as he said, "I've thought it through. Putting aside grudges and resentment, my master always valued the family above all. The Yuan family is in a difficult spot. If she could choose, she'd choose our junior brother too. I've toiled in the Eastern Sea all this time and still haven't found my master, not even a whisper. I've no face left to be a peak master." Kaijian shook his head repeatedly and said in a sorrowful tone, "Zijie, the world is full of helpless things. We must learn to let go. Back then, there was more to Qijing's case than you know. I too was powerless." Li Zijie showed just the right trace of curiosity on his face, and Kaijian immediately changed the topic, speaking solemnly, "Since you won't take back Kingsui Peak, there are still empty seats among the 36 peaks. Zhang Lingshu of Changshan Peak just died in the Eastern Sea, and his Dao lineage was severed, so I'm assigning that peak to you." Just as Kaijian finished speaking, Li Zijie didn't immediately give thanks. Instead, he feigned a look of being deeply moved and asked, "May I ask which Dao lineage it belongs to?" "Oh, it came from a rogue cultivator. Zhang Lingshu was an only daughter," replied Kaijian. Li Zijie nodded repeatedly, appearing touched as he said, "Thank you, sect master. I am truly grateful." Kaijian was smiling as he stroked his beard when someone below interrupted. An elegantly dressed man stepped forward and respectfully said, "Sect master, to the east." Only then did he notice Li Zijie in the room. Startled, he fell silent at once. Li Zijie immediately recognized him as Ning Heiyuan of the Ning family, now showing great deference toward Kaijian. Kaijian said warmly, "Zijie, you may go for now. My younger brother is already waiting below, just follow him." Li Zijie bowed respectfully and withdrew. Ning Heiyuan kept his gaze lowered in silence. Kaijian, smiling inwardly, waved his hand and listened as Ning Heiyuan began his report. "Sect master, there's trouble at Crimson Reef Island and Great Ziyuqi Temple. Lin Chensheng killed Gu Honger on an Eastern Sea island. Red rain filled the sky and it caused quite a stir. It seems a Purple Mansion Realm cultivator intervened." Kaijian seemed to already know. He calmly turned the jade talisman in his hand and said softly, "The east and west sides of Crimson Reef have long been at odds. Gu Shentong hasn't appeared for ages. This was bound to happen eventually." Ning Heiyuan finished reporting a few other minor matters and gradually withdrew, leaving Kaijian seated alone. He quietly gazed in the direction Li Zijie had gone, the smile on his face slowly fading. A thought stirred in his heart. None of them are easy to handle. I thought Tang Shedu was already troublesome enough, but this Li Zijie, he's even harder to control than Tang Shedu. The Kong family indeed needs heavenly glow, and Changxi did request it from Taoist Master Suiguan. Li Zijie alone doesn't have that much clout. Kaijian pondered for a moment, then set the jade talisman aside. If Tang Shecheng and Yu Yuxi were still alive, with Zhao Yuanxi and Yu Xiaxian also here, I wouldn't have to rely on anyone in particular right now. Among the many Purple Mansion Realm cultivators, he actually preferred Yuan Su's way of doing things and disliked people like Kai Wei who fished the pond dry. But then he reconsidered and thought, once I reach Purple Mansion Realm myself, perhaps I'll think differently. Chapter 736, Changshan Peak II. Back on Li Zijie's end, he descended through the wind. A young man was waiting on the mountain. He resembled Kaijian quite a bit, but had a gloomier. Yet now his face bore a sincere smile as he said, "Jian greets the peak master." Li Zijie had heard of this man's reputation and dared not take him lightly, so he waved his hands repeatedly in courtesy. Kaijian, however, was warm and talkative, rambling on at length. Li Zijie nodded politely and saw him off with a cupped hand salute as they arrived together at Changshan Peak. Changshan Peak wasn't very tall, it was rugged and steep in places. Since it had been uninhabited for years, wild grass covered the slopes. Li Zijie descended with the wind and saw that only a single, quaint little dwelling stood atop the summit. Li Zijie had intended to inquire about Zhang Lingshu but didn't trust Kaijian, so he exchanged a few polite words, then courteously escorted him off the peak. Kaijian cupped his hands in farewell and still made bold assurances. He said, "Brother Zijie, my elder brother's always busy and can't manage all his underlings, but if you face any trouble at all, just come to me, Kaijian. I'll handle it myself. I won't let Changshan Peak suffer the slightest indignity." Li Zijie nodded and smiled, though he didn't believe a word. He returned to the peak on the wind and began tidying up carefully. Most of the formations within the pavilion were still functional. It looked elegant and refined. As he continued tidying the mountain, sure enough, a visitor arrived after just 15 minutes. The visitor was tall, and upon stepping into the mountain, he greeted with enthusiasm. "Zijai, you finally got yourself a fine mountain." "You're quite well-informed, brother-in-law," replied Li Zijai, smiling faintly and showing a hint of genuine warmth. The man before him was Yang Ruizhou, the older brother of his wife, Yang Xiaor. He was a Foundation Establishment Realm cultivator with whom he had crossed paths a few times before. Yang Ruizhou looked around briefly, exchanged a few words, and before Li Zijai could even ask, he smiled and said, "I've heard some things too. I don't have much detail yet, but I've already sent someone to compile information on this peak. You'll have it delivered tonight." Moongaze Lake. The northern shore's mountains were covered in pristine snow. Li Zijin had been silently observing the lake for several days and had already seen signs of more than a dozen skirmishes. "The Fei family is really in trouble," muttered Li Zijin. The north bank of Moongaze Lake bordered Sioux State, and the Fei family was the first to bear the brunt. The Buddhist and Devil cultivators fleeing Sioux State were split into two groups by Mount Ziping, heading separately toward Wu and Yue states. Fortunately, the Fei family's formation was a legacy from ancient times, capable of withstanding Foundation Establishment R-Ilm attacks. And with the cultivators in a rush to cover their tracks, unwilling to linger, nothing too disastrous had happened yet. Even so, several members of the Fei family who ventured out had been killed by Devil or Buddhist cultivators. They had now learned their lesson and withdrawn entirely into the mountain, refusing to budge. Li Zijin waited patiently. After a time, he saw two streaks of light flying past the lake's central island. The one ahead emitted panic Dharma light, and the one behind was dim and shadowy, its origins unclear. Li Zijin looked at their trajectory, and he was pretty sure that they were coming from Sioux State. He thought, just as the Yue cultivating sect pulled its forces back, Sioux State's cultivators are already fleeing into Yue State. They're flying around blind. It's clear how chaotic Sioux State has become. He had encountered 5 or 6 such cases over the past few days, but hadn't found the right opportunity to catch someone for questioning. First, avoid Buddhist cultivators. They're clever, love playing games, and have tangled history with my family. As for Devil or Orthodox cultivators, I must choose someone with low cultivation and no strong backing. He had waited for days. Finally, these two came along. Their light escape techniques were crude at best, likely Devil cultivators or Immortal cultivators. He rode the breeze and snow, instantly cutting off the one in front. Li Zijin reached out and grabbed the man. The man's light was instantly shattered. He had no time to react. Just like a lamb to the slaughter, he was caught. His cultivation was sealed and cast into the swirling snow. The man turned out to be an old fellow in a tattered Taoist robe that was holding a fly whisk. His face was full of terror, but with his cultivation and speech both sealed, he could say nothing. Though unable to speak, he curled up in the wind, pressing his palms together and pleading for mercy with frantic gestures. The one behind reacted far faster. At the first sign of snow and wind, he turned tail and fled, erupting into a red mist. Clearly, he had used a blood-burning spell that consumed life force for speed. Li Zijin nodded slightly, formed a seal with 2 fingers, and pointed gently at the fleeing figure. A stream of white light, the slaughtered Jun Kui light, gushed out like a flowing ribbon. It was as thin as silk and as swift as lightning. It flashed through the air, brushed across the fleeing light, and with a cry of pain, all of the man's spells were wiped clean. He plummeted into the lake below. The fleeing man turned out to be a young cultivator. His face was pale from the secret technique he had used. Clad in black, his blood chi surged. Whether from his cultivation method or the spell itself was unclear. Li Zijin reached out, sealed the young man's cultivation, and pulled him up without pause. 2 Chi cultivation realm cultivators were nothing more than meat on the chopping block before him. They were entirely defenseless. Without saying a word, he took to the wind and flew south. After around 5 minutes, Li Xiaowei appeared, clad in armor and standing with a halberd in hand. Behind him was Chen Yang, who had just broken through Chi cultivation realm and was now riding the wind as well. As the years passed, the oddities in Li Xiaowei's appearance had faded. Now, standing aloft on the wind, he looked no different from an ordinary cultivator, except for a strange power in his gaze that made it difficult to look away. Everything else about him was well concealed. His features had matured, his shoulders had broadened, and he now bore a resemblance to his father. The strange aura from his birth had mostly dissipated, though Chen Yang still stood at attention with proper form and discipline. Li Xiaowei was now at the 3rd stage of the Qi cultivation realm. He wasn't rushing to advance further, as doing so might draw unwanted attention. Instead, he devoted most of his time to mastering halberd techniques. After a short wait, Li Zijin arrived on the wind with a breeze of snow trailing behind. The young Foundation Establishment Realm cultivator in charge of Qingdu wore a troubled look, and 2 cultivators lay curled up on a spirit wind beside him. Li Xiaowei had now officially joined Qingdu's ranks. With Li Ziming in long-term seclusion, Li Qing hung away across the outer seas, and both Li Zijai and Li Xunfeng stationed at Azure Pond Sect. Only Li Zijin and Li Xiaowei remained on Mount Qingdu to manage family matters. Li Xiaowei glanced briefly at the captives and understood at once. He said in a low voice, "Uncle, there was another disturbance just now. This is already the 7th Buddhist cultivator to fly across the border this month." The northern skies were dim and heavy. Li Zijin had just returned from visiting the Fei family. Over the past few days, he had seen things clearly, and upon hearing this, replied, "That's right, I came back from the northern shore. The Fei family has already lost 3 Qi cultivation realm cultivators. I caught these 2 along the way. We'll question them thoroughly about what's happening up north." Chapter 737, Father and Son I. The 2 returned to Qingdu, flinging the 2 cultivators to the ground. First, they sealed the 6 senses of the white-robed old Taoist, tossing him aside like a rotting log, then removed the restraints on the black-clad cultivator. The black-clad cultivator immediately turned over and kowtowed, respectfully saying, "Greetings to the 2 seniors. I am He Yidao, a cultivator from Su State, cultivating at Mount Bianyan. With the Buddhist cultivators pushing south, we had no place to stand and were forced to cross into Yue State. If we have caused any offense, I am willing to offer full compensation." Li Zijin merely waved his hand and asked, "What is the current situation in Su State?" The black-clad cultivator quickly replied, "The Buddhist cultivators swept southward, reaching the southern parts of Su State. The battles centered around Mount Bianyan, and even the great demonic beast Sanjin of the mountain couldn't stay out of it. His subordinate demonic generals were captured and eaten, and Sanjin himself fled on the wind to Mount Dali, leaving chaos in his wake. Did the Purple Mansion Realm cultivators or Maha intervene?" Li Zijin asked carefully, and the black-clad youth replied, "I haven't seen them. Only 2 of the merciful ones were overseeing the battle. The Golden Feather Sect and Azure Pond Sect sent a group of Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators, but there has been no sign of Maha in the north." Lowering his eyes respectfully, he quietly observed and said, "Across Su State, landslides and cracks have appeared everywhere and strange phenomena abound. I've heard a giant boulder 2,000 meters tall fell in the north. The rivers in the east have dried up and fish and shrimp in the riverbeds are singing. Events like these are countless." Li Zijin asked another 2 questions, then continued, "Which Tao of the Buddhist cultivators is leading the charge?" He Yidao froze, gritted his teeth in thought for a moment, then said, "I've only heard of the way of compassion and the Tao of great desire, and also the way of emptiness. As for which Tao lineage the 2 merciful ones belong to, I am too low in rank to know." Li Zijin nodded. Beside him, Li Xuanxuan stroked his beard and asked with concern, "Has there been any sign of the way of wrath?" He Yidao paused for a moment, then said uncertainly, "Your Excellency may not know, but the way of wrath once reincarnated. Back then, its physical form was cleaved by the celestial moon Li Tangya, and its true form was besieged by the Purple Mansion Realm cultivators. Its Tao lineage suffered heavy losses, their inquiries to the law went unanswered. It's rarely seen anymore." Li Zijin nodded slightly, gave him a glance, then questioned him 3 more times. He sent a stream of mana into his body, and sure enough, the man was a devil cultivator. Without waiting for him to speak, Li Zijin flipped his hand and tossed him aside, then removed the restraints from the old Taoist. The old man fell to his knees with a thud and said in a trembling voice, "Your Excellency." The biting wind and snow around Li Zijin were fierce, but his voice was gentle as he asked, "Old man, where are you from and why have you come here?" "I am from Su State." "A rogue cultivator from the floating cloud cave of Mount Zai-Oshi." He cried sorrowfully. The 5-eyed merciful one of the way of emptiness and several master monks descended near Mount Zai-Oshi. 16 households of us scattered in panic. Those who ran slowly slit their own throats, or cut off their limbs, ears, and noses, or leapt off the cliffs. I've cultivated for over 100 years and only managed to survive by running fast. I escaped from the hands of Master Monk Su Mu and ended up in this region. Li Zijin gripped his sword, frowning as doubts arose in his heart. Before he could speak, the man cried out repeatedly, "Please wait, Your Excellency, please wait." He raised his head slightly, one eye glancing upward to read their expressions. Curling his body inward, he spoke quickly like spilling beads. "My martial uncle has been cultivating by this lake for many years. I came here this time just to seek refuge with him. Please wait, Your Excellency. Perhaps we are even allies." The old man was well versed. Upon hearing this, Li Xuanxun became intrigued and asked, "When was this, and does he have a Dao title?" Seeing his expression, the old Taoist quickly formed a plan. A flattering smile appeared on his face as he replied, "I am Fu Yuan. My martial uncle's Dao title is Ling Gizi. He broke through the Qi cultivation realm about 130 years ago and came to this lake to seek fortune. I don't know if he has reached the Foundation Establishment realm by now." Li Xuanxuan found the story odd. His smile faded and he quietly glanced at him, saying, "I think you've lost your mind, daring to spout nonsense here. A rogue cultivator takes, 60 years to break through the Qi cultivation realm. He came here 130 years ago. He's probably long dead in some forgotten corner. Just because someone once cultivated in a place doesn't make them destined to be there. Taoist Fu Yuan was terrified, shaking his head repeatedly as he hurriedly said, "Your Excellency, my martial uncle carries a great fortune with him. He is definitely not ordinary." Li Xuanxuan no longer quite believed him and only asked, "What kind of fortune?" Taoist Fu Yuan couldn't explain and stammered. "My master was still thinking of my martial uncle on his deathbed, saying our grandmaster passed the fortune to him before he died." He couldn't explain it, and what great fortune could a Qi cultivation realm rogue cultivator possibly have anyway? Fu Yuan knew this in his heart and could only keep kowtowing without saying another word. Li Xuanxuan saw that the man's qi wasn't particularly impure. For someone from a place like Su State, it was already rare and precious. He wasn't planning to make things difficult and was just about to speak. "Wait." Li Zijian suddenly stopped him, frowning and shaking his head. Taoist Fu Yuan grew even more terrified, raising his head in panic, thinking the old man is kind, but this handsome young man is ruthless. Li Zijian simply gave him a calm glance and asked softly, "Old man, how did you escape from the merciful ones and the master monks?" Taoist Fu Yuan stared blankly at him, as if trying to recall, and after several breaths he exclaimed in surprise, "Oh dear, I've completely forgotten." Blood seeped from his mouth and nose. With a cry of pain, his body collapsed like a bundle of firewood, hitting the ground with a thud. He was dead without another sound. Li Zijian stepped back and used mana to flip the body. Taoist Fu Yuan's face was pale and skin cold. With 2 fingers forming a sword, Li Zijian slit open his abdomen. Inside was pitch black. His internal organs had vanished, leaving behind only a shriveled, dead maggot. Li Xuanxuan stood in a daze, while on the other side, Li Xiaowei gripped his halberd thoughtfully. Li Zijian conjured flame between 2 fingers and gently dropped it onto the empty skin. With a burst of crackling sounds, boom, the dried-up flesh caught fire instantly, flaring brightly for a moment before turning to ash. Seeing this, He Yidao was terrified to the extreme, tears and snot flowing as he said in a low voice, "I possess nothing of value. Your Excellency would disdain such things, but for the sake of my harmlessness, I beg for my life. I will obey your every command without a hint of betrayal." He feared Li Zijian would ask something that would cost him his life on the spot, but the man merely took his storage pouch, examined it for a breath, saw it was full of blood-stained meat and rice and shook his head. Before He Yidao could react, a scorching pain bloomed in his chest. Heat surged from his belly and spurted out his nostrils. A halberd had pierced through his chest, its shaft held by the demonic fetus he had nurtured in his abdomen immediately awoke. It was a tiny, mouse-like lump of flesh. It wriggled a few times inside him, but before it could burst out or hide, a hand plunged once more into his belly. Li Xiaowei held the halberd with one hand, stirred around in the belly with the other, fished out the demonic fetus, studied it for 2 seconds, and casually crushed it. Though He Yidao was at least an early-stage Qi cultivation realm devil cultivator, he had no chance to react. His head was removed in the next instant. Chapter 738, Father and Son II. Golden flame surged from Li Xiaowei's hand, laced with black smoke. He cast it onto the corpse, and in an instant, golden sparks consumed it completely. The young heir retracted his halberd, and Li Zijian nodded, saying, "The bright Yang Dao is also effective against devil cultivators. Though it's not as potent as Supreme Yang or Profound Thunder, it's still well regarded." Beside them, Li Xuanxuan was still staring blankly at Taoist Fu Yuan's corpse. Li Zijian turned to look back and seeing the old man lost in thought, said with some concern, "Uncle." Li Xuanxuan stepped forward slowly, took the storage pouch from Taoist Fu Yuan's waist, examined it closely, and murmured, "So very familiar." This small brocade pouch was different from the ones commonly used in Yue State. It was more delicate and compact. Li Xuanxuan studied it for a while, and a look of reminiscence appeared on his face as he softly said, "The first storage pouch my family ever owned looked just like this." After saying this, he grew more certain, turning the pouch over again and again, his voice drifting. "Back then, Uncle Xiangping went to rescue the Wan family. Who would have thought the Jai family borrowed strength from the Golden Tang Gate and utterly crushed the Wan family? My uncle ran into an old Taoist who tried to kill him. That old Taoist had waited in the lake for 30 years, seeking a fortune, but was killed by my uncle, who brought back this very storage pouch. It seems he was the martial uncle mentioned just now." Li Xuanxuan paused in thought for a breath and softly said, "If there's ever a chance, we should go visit Floating Cloud Cave on Mount Zioshi." Li Zijian, of course, understood what he meant. He nodded silently and said softly, "The situation in Su State is utterly chaotic. With the Fei family holding the front, we can discuss things more thoroughly. After all, it's a rare foundation establishment realm formation. If used well, we could reduce our own losses significantly." Li Xuanxuan put the storage pouch away, his expression showing faint dissatisfaction as he said, "Even at this point, they still refuse to send someone to ask for aid." Li Zijian let out a small laugh. Li Xiaowei stood tall and said softly, "The Azure Pond sect is 10,000 miles away, far beyond reach. It takes over a month to go and return, but we're just across the lake, close at hand. A distant stream can't put out a nearby fire. They'll see it clearly soon enough." Both seniors nodded. After arranging the defenses, Li Xiaowei soon took his leave, riding the wind out of Qingdu, drifting lightly into the side courtyard of the central hall. Chen Yang followed closely behind, speaking respectfully, "Your Highness, my father has been waiting in the hall for quite some time." Hearing this, Li Xiaowei nodded and finally came to a stop. As expected, he saw the middle-aged Chen Mufeng waiting respectfully in the great hall, holding a young woman by the hand. Chen Mufeng had now reached the late stage of the qi cultivation realm. Though he had erred in the Su Zhao matter years ago and was severely punished, the Chen family remained a prominent family, and Chen Dong held considerable favor. So Mufeng still had some standing. He approached with a full smile. Chen Mufeng had married Li Zicheng's younger sister and was also Li Qinggliao's uncle by marriage. He spoke, "Your Highness, this is my youngest daughter, Chen Shao, born of a concubine. Now that she's grown a bit older, I've brought her for your Highness to see." Li Xiaowei naturally understood what he was trying to do. Glancing at the demure, downcast girl, he deliberately avoided eye contact and flung his robe aside. He walked straight into the room, leaving only a voice echoing through the courtyard, "Go ask my father." Chen Mufeng was thoroughly shut down. He exchanged a glance with Chen Yang and could only withdraw quietly. As the father and daughter left the courtyard, Chen Shao seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, her steps growing noticeably lighter. Chen Mufeng let out a low sigh, while Chen Yang walked slowly with a dark expression clouding his face. Back at the Chen residence, Chen Shao gave a hurried bow and retreated as if fleeing. Chen Mufeng seemed calm enough, simply leading Chen Yang forward. The father and son said nothing as they made their way swiftly to the rear courtyard. Madame Li was reading and glanced up to ask, "So it didn't work out?" Chen Yang answered coldly, "Correct." He gave a slight bow, flung his sleeve, and left. Chen Mufeng stood awkwardly in the courtyard. Madame Li merely sighed and said, "If it didn't work, so be it. We just wanted to see if either side would take a liking. I don't blame you for anything." Madame Li had always been a gentle and fair mistress of the household. Chen Mufeng knew this well. He nodded, and when their eyes met, both saw the same worry reflected in the other. Chen Mufeng's expression was no longer just awkward, he was angry too. After brooding for a while and drinking several cups of tea, he could no longer hold back and said in a low, tense voice, He's truly vicious to the core." Madame Li sighed. The middle-aged woman was gradually growing helpless too and said softly, "I don't know who he takes after. The more we taught him, the more he learned to manipulate and use people." Chen Mufeng's anger surged again, and he ground his teeth as he said, "How did we end up raising him like this? He wasn't this cold and heartless, this sharp and unkind when he was little. Though he had always favored this eldest son, he was still a father. His heart held feelings for all his children," he said coldly, the way he looked. It was as if the younger sister didn't marry the heir, he'd pull a blade to force her. Madame Li lowered her eyes, unsure of how to comfort her husband for a moment. Creak. A crisp creaking sound echoed as the courtyard gate was pushed open. A pale, lean and nimble hand appeared, followed by their eldest son, Chen Yang, stepping inside with a calm smile on his face. His face was sharp and cold, even smiling. He exuded a chilling sense of cunning. The eldest son spoke softly, "Father, let's go see the family head tomorrow." Both husband and wife felt a chill run down their spines, struck speechless. The courtyard gate was supposed to isolate sound. Chen Yang, who had just left, couldn't possibly have heard their conversation, yet Chen Mufeng felt his son's gaze chill him to the bone like frost. Somehow he nodded unconsciously. Chen Yang chuckled, gripped the doorway with both hands and stepped out backward. He closed the doors behind him with two crisp creaks, tight and shut. Chen Mufeng vaguely felt sweat forming on his forehead. He picked up his tea and drank heavily for several gulps before turning to look at his wife again. Madame Li sat frozen in place, staring blankly. After a long moment, she finally said in a soft voice, "I once thought that sending him to the main household would refine his temperament, teach him humility and restraint, help him understand there are always greater people in this world." Her eyes lowered slightly as she spoke quietly. "Now I feel. Sending him to the heir side, letting him lead troops and kill, suppressing Mount Yue only sharpened his claws and fangs. He once only looked cruel and cunning, but now it's in his very bones." Chen Mufeng sat in a daze for more than 10 seconds, feeling an icy chill spread through his heart before he finally said coldly, "He only values the ones on Qingdu, only sees them as his kind, only yields to the heir. As for us, we're nothing more than tools he can rely on when needed." Hearing this, Madame Li was startled and shocked. She suddenly raised her head, staring at the man who had seemed foolish beside her for most of their lives, and a strange premonition rose in her heart, so it turns out. The son's cunning comes from a father who was never simple either. When she tried to ask Chen Mufeng again, the man remained silent. Chapter 739, Miao Quan I. Eastern Sea. Li Qinghong rode the water veins all the way back from the scarlet, pristine sea. Only when she reached the shallow sea did she emerge from the water, then flew for a few more days, gradually finding the skies above growing livelier. She had only ridden the thunder for a few miles when she sensed mana fluctuations from all directions. The flow of spiritual energy was unstable, and when she looked around, Dharma light streamed across the sky. It was chaotic and bustling. "It's come to this kind of mess," she muttered. At that, Li Qinghong had no choice but to conceal her light, lower her speed, and fly a bit higher as she headed westward. Along the way, she witnessed many battles. There were immortal cultivators clashing in dazzling light, Buddhist and devil cultivators locked in chaos, and even some familiar sects among them. As she passed over an island, the sea below was dyed blood-red, and just then, she ran into a black-robed man riding the wind with a severed head in his hand. Li Qinghong sensed trouble and quickly veered her light in another direction, hoping to avoid him. But the man frowned at her, then actually rode his spirit wind to approach. A surge of warning rose in her heart. She gave the man a brief glance. His robes looked to be from the great Ziyuqi temple, black and gray interwoven, inscribed with many runes. They glanced at each other. The man seemed to have confirmed something and flew straight toward her. Li Qinghong had no way to avoid it, so she cupped her fists and said, "May I ask what business brings you here, senior?" The man had just killed someone and still held a severed head, yet his expression was polite and gentle as he said softly, "Are you Qinghong?" "And you are." Li Qinghong was certain she had never seen this man before, and doubt filled her heart. The man simply said, "I am Lin Chensheng. I've seen your portrait before. I have some acquaintance with your second uncle." The great Ziyuqi temple didn't have a particularly bad reputation. Li Qinghong was half convinced when the man added, "Best not to go ahead. Detour a bit as the great Ziyuqi temple is attacking the Crimson Reef Island market ahead. If you stray into it, you might get hurt." With that, he stowed the severed head, paid a brief farewell, and turned to ride the wind away. He didn't care whether Li Qinghong believed him or not. After thinking for a moment, she recalled vaguely hearing that name from her second uncle, Li Xuanfeng. She changed direction and flew with her aura suppressed, but soon noticed more and more devil cultivators appearing. The Eastern Sea was Dragon Clan territory. It was not like the Southern Sea that was known for its devil cultivators. Its major powers were mostly Purple Mansion and Golden Core Realms cultivators, considered orthodox immortals nowadays. Normally, one wouldn't see so many devil cultivators here. But now the sky was truly filled with rolling demonic clouds. After a few more seconds of flight, she suddenly saw thunder roiling ahead. There were multiple bolts of lightning interlinking in the clouds, unleashing deafening booms. It's truly descended into chaos. Avoid one disaster, run into another, thought Li Qinghong. "Miao Quan, how dare you?" A clear, cold, melodious female voice rang out. Li Qinghong had been preparing to flee stealthily, but the voice made her pause. There was something familiar about it. She thought to herself, "Seems like someone I know." She glanced slightly and saw a female cultivator standing amid the clouds with elegant brows and bright eyes. Recognition immediately dawned in her heart, so it's her. Sure enough, there came a dull thunderclap from within the clouds, lightning scattering, followed by a male voice, fellow Taoist yanking. "I do not seek your life, only that profound thunderstone. I simply wish for a way to exchange for it. You need only name your terms, fairy." The woman was none other than Shen Yanking, whom Li Qinghong had met back when she visited the Purple Smoke Gate. Also a practitioner of thunder arts, Shen Yanking came from an illustrious background. Not only was she born into a Purple Mansion realm immortal family, but she was also a personal disciple of the Purple Smoke Gate. She had been very courteous to Li Qinghong back then. Now, however, her expression was nothing like the polite warmth she had shown Li Qinghong. It was cold as she replied, "Profound thunderstone. What thunderstone? I've only heard of such an item and it's extremely rare. Why would I have such a treasure?" The man gradually revealed his figure. He was bare-chested, muscular, with a wild expression. He held a large axe in his hand and spoke with relative politeness. "Fairy Shen must be joking. With your background and lineage, that profound thunderstone must surely be in your possession." Profound thunderstone. Thunder roared around them. Li Qinghong sighed inwardly. Now that she had come this way, she likely couldn't avoid this matter. She wasn't sure if the others had noticed her, so she remained silent. But Shen Yanking was growing colder by the moment. She said simply, "Taoist Miao, please step aside." Miao Quan, standing before her, stared intently. A subtle calculation began to form in his heart. The Purple Smoke Gate Senior is preparing for a breakthrough. He definitely has no time to oversee anything. The Yue cultivating sect is sealed, and Taoist Master Yumming is in no state to interfere. This is a perfect opportunity. I don't need to kill her. Just force her to hand over the item. As long as I get the Thunderstone, even if Taoist Master Yumming has objections, my own elders can shield me. If I miss this chance, there may never be another opportunity for the profound Thunderstone. After a moment of silence, he raised his great axe and spoke gently. "I've heard that several thunder cultivators have emerged in the mainland, all from lineages that summon and command lightning. Yet I've never had a chance to test myself against one. It's rare to encounter a fellow Taoist here. How about a friendly match? It'll be a good learning experience." Those words made Shen Yanking's expression shift slightly. A cold sneer tugged at her lips. "You, a well-known late-stage Foundation Establishment Realm cultivator who's nearly at Purple Mansion Realm, want to spar with me, a junior barely in the early stage of the Foundation Establishment Realm." Miao Quan said nothing more. He silently raised his lightning axe and started gathering white lightning. Shen Yanking responded in kind, summoning her own thunder. Boom. Miao Quan struck her lightning technique apart with a single axe blow and felt a considerable force coming through his hands. He thought, this Shen family girl does have some skill. She's not like the usual Foundation Establishment Realm rabble. Just as he gathered more white lightning, a silver spear burst through the clouds, radiating intense violet light. It streaked across the sky, decisively and forcefully barring his path. As the clouds briefly parted, a female cultivator in jade armor appeared. Her apricot eyes gazed calmly ahead as she spoke in a soft tone. "Taoist friend, if you seek to test yourself against thunder cultivators of the mainland, then you're in luck. Let us spar together." Miao Quan's expression darkened instantly. Courteous as he had been to Shen Yanking, she was after all a direct descendant of the Shen family. But he had no idea who this new woman was. He said coldly, "You meddle too much. Are you not afraid of death or the extermination of your family?" His voice was icy. Behind Li Qinghong, Shen Yanking looked pleasantly surprised. After a slight pause, she called out, "Sister." Chapter 740, Miao Quan II. Li Qinghong had been watching quietly for a while now. Her intervention wasn't impulsive. She'd experienced much and suspicion had long stirred in her heart. A duel between thunder cultivators, and I just happened to stumble into it. Curious indeed. Shen Yanking and I are acquainted, and she's backed by 2 Purple Mansion Realm cultivators. With a clash like this, I wouldn't be surprised if signs of higher realm interference had already begun. Regardless of whether Purple Mansion Realm cultivators were involved, Li Qinghong knew her stealth art wasn't anything profound. She suspected that Shen Yanking had already sensed her presence earlier. Perhaps she had even been retreating in this direction on purpose. Whether or not it's worth intervening, if I turn away now, I'll likely offend both the Purple Smoke Gate and the Shen family. There's no other way forward. As the two of them were speaking, Li Qinghong had already reached her decision. She reversed her spear grip, let violet light flicker from its tip, and surged forth on thunder, intercepting the man in an instant. Shen Yanking was quick-witted. Calling her sister was enough to startle Miao Quan into momentary hesitation, making him glance over in a daze. After all, Li Qinghong was a late-stage Foundation Establishment Realm cultivator. If she was indeed from an immortal family bloodline, her strength was likely on par with Miao Quan's, and with Shen Yanking at her side, taking Li Qinghong down wouldn't be easy. Miao Quan's face flickered with indecision for a second. Then he gave Li Qinghong a once-over and suddenly sneered, "You think I'm so easily fooled? That armor of hers doesn't even register at the Foundation Establishment Realm. She's not from the Shen family." Li Qinghong wasn't surprised in the least. She angled her spear and said quietly, eyes blazing with battle spirit, "Come." Miao Quan's face turned grim. He raised his axe high, white lightning surging from its edge. He said, "Foolish." He lunged forward and the lightning gathered before him in a flash, rippling outward from his axe. This wasn't celestial thunder he cultivated. It was brighter, denser, and violently focused. Li Qinghong lifted her spear. Her technique born from the Zhao family's wing clipper spear technique and the Fei family's dragon reflection had become increasingly masterful. Pale violet avian shadows burst forth in the air, swarming like birds from every direction. As the two types of thunder clashed, a series of deafening explosions echoed through the sky, churning the waves and dispersing the clouds. Miao Quan pulled his axe back and only a faint layer of white light remained on its blade, only slightly better. He was secretly shocked, though his face betrayed nothing. With a flick of his wrist, he rode the momentum to summon more lightning. White brilliance surged outward in dense, worm-like arcs, striking toward both opponents. Li Qinghong twirled her spear gracefully, sending up a wave of violet light to block the strike. Nearby, Shen Yanking's face paled slightly as Miao Quan suddenly erupted with overwhelming force. The white lightning around his axe grew several times stronger, shaking the air with deafening momentum. That white lightning clung to his axe like countless writhing worms, crawling up his arm. It was a terrifying sight. His earlier moves had only been feints, now he was showing his true strength. But Shen Yanking was only in the early Foundation Establishment Realm. Li Qinghong had no choice but to step forward with her spear and intercept the blow. Boom! A thunderclap rang out from the flat sky. White lightning crashed into the sea, raising clouds of steam and countless dead fish floating belly up in the water. Staggering slightly in the mist, blood trickled from Li Qinghong's lips. Her long spear hummed with excitement, resonating against the thunder. Know your place. Get lost while you still can. Miao Quan still didn't know her background. He simply wanted to scare her off quickly. Lightning lashed forth from his axe as a faint smile crept onto his face, though it quickly froze in suspicion. Why is it? Like her aura is growing stronger. He saw Li Qingheng's spear dance with increasing might. Purple lightning and spear shadows surged forth in a storm, battering his axe without pause. Miao Quan thought her reckless. White light flared from his elbows as thunder surged up his arms, connecting with the lightning of his Dharma artifact. He released pulse after pulse of blinding white light. He fought 2 opponents alone. His spirit axe swung faster and faster, thundering with lightning. Li Qingheng still managed to trade blows and deflect the backlash, but Shen Yanqing was clearly beginning to struggle. Growing more ruthless, Miao Quan clenched the air, grasping a roiling bundle of white lightning. His other hand formed a seal, then flipped his palm outward. White lightning leapt forth. At that exact moment, the violet-patterned lightning flask at Li Qingheng's waist activated, erupting with streams of purple-white lightning in various hues that collided with Miao Quan's spell. Miao Quan's spell was clearly of a high tier, yet it matched Li Qingheng's long-refined lightning forged from heaven and earth. He was briefly surprised, then gave a chilling grin. His spell seals grew faster and faster, and the white lightning became more ferocious. Shen Yanqing quickly pulled a small mirror from her robes and released a soft yellow glow that shone gently toward the white lightning. Boom! The spell faltered. Miao Quan's expression shifted. He rapidly changed his hand seals but could no longer hold it together. The lightning scattered into countless motes of white light and vanished into the... Just as anger began to show on his face, Li Qingheng suddenly lifted her head. A pair of violet glints surfaced in her eyes. Though her voice was a touch hoarse, it still carried that same nimble and spirited tone. "Senior, take this strike from me." Li Qingheng pressed her lips together and exhaled a bead of white light. The warm and elegant light bounced lightly and in an instant expanded to the size of a fist. In the sky, streaks of violet lightning patterns appeared. The white light flickered in the air and surged forward at incredible speed. Miao Quan's face twisted in sudden fear. His heart skipped a beat as he cried inwardly, "Tao of thunder steering and cloud dwelling." Boom! He only had time to summon a bronze shield. In a blink, the reef stones on an island several hundred meters away crumbled with a crash. The sea depressed inward, then erupted violently, streaked with violet-white lightning that rained down in a dense barrage. It was the profound thunderbolt, nurtured for years in Li Qingheng's personal thunder pool. Li Qingheng hadn't spent her years cultivating in the outer seas in vain. Times had changed. Back when she was only in the early Foundation establishment realm, that very thunderbolt had already drawn praise from Zhang Yun of the Golden Feather sect. Now she was in the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm. Her cultivation, insight, mana, and spiritual sense were all far beyond what they had once been. When this thunderbolt landed, it was as though even heaven's light bent down in awe. Only when the white radiance finally faded did Miao Quan reappear, his expression dark. He hadn't been gravely injured as only a corner of his robes was singed, but there was clear frustration and humiliation on his face. His body was now covered in writhing white lightning. It was like a fearsome armor clinging to his frame. Taking a step forward, his hand brimming with lightning, Miao Quan reached straight for the long spear in Li Qingheng's hands. But how could Li Qingheng let him get his way? She flicked her spear with elegant precision. The tip lashed out with a flash and a boom, forcing him several inches away in a burst of thunder. Miao Quan grasped at nothing and felt as if he'd struck solid. Then his eyes fell on the silver spear in Li Qingheng's hand. It looked oddly familiar. He froze for a moment, focused his gaze, and blurted out, "Duruo." The moment the words left his lips, Li Qingheng was visibly taken aback. Behind her, Shen Yanqing was also momentarily stunned. Both of them turned their eyes toward the spear in her hand.